Background information. The North is the only kingdom that was never conquered by the Targaryens. This is due to a variety of reasons. First, after Joramun and Brandon the Breaker joined forces to defeat the Night's King, 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Joramun decided to pledge the Free Folk to the Starks. This means that the children of the forest, giants and wargs are common throughout the North, not only beyond the wall. There were some problems of course, since the Free Folk are a proud people, but one by one clans saw the benefits of being allied to the Starks and bent the knee. Second, the North is a lot more populated here. They can raise about 160,000 fighting men. Third, they are as wealthy as the Western lands. The North has lots of trade with Essos, specifically Bravos, and their mountains are rich in gold, silver and iron. Fourth, the North has established a royal army of 20,000, a royal navy of 10,000 and changed the purpose of the Night's Watch, which is used as a peacekeeping force only for the defense of the North, not what it is in canon, which is manned by 10,000 men. All of these answer directly to the Crown of Winter. Fifth, to invade the North by land you have to get through the Twins, House Free was erased, the Neck and Moat Cailin, which is in perfect condition with all of its 20 towers functioning. Targaryen conquest. Aegon's conquest proceeded in the same way, but after the Field of Fire instead of turning north they decided to consolidate their power. This was due to the fact that the North could raise more fighting men than the other kingdoms and its long history of defending against Andal invasions. With 5 of the 7 kingdoms and the Iron Islands under their control they decided that would first try to conquer Dorne and have all of the south under the Dragon's banner before turning north, since a northern campaign would undoubtedly be a lot harder. Rhaenys, sister wife to Aegon, eventually died in the Dornish marches and all plans of a northern conquest were put on hold. War of 73 AC. In 73 AC Jaehaerys the Conciliator made the decision to commence a northern conquest, where they gathered 100,000 men to attack the north, led by Prince Aemon, Jaehaerys' heir, and Balon Targaryen, the heir to the heir. They lost 10,000 men taking the Twins and 5,000 more while marching through the Neck. Once they got to Moat Cailin, they were met by 80,000 men and 2,000 armored giants led by King Alaric Stark. The giants were armed with huge bows which could theoretically shoot down dragons. This made the Targaryens cautious, and they didn't use their dragons for the first 3 days, instead testing Moat Cailin's defenses. They lost 25,000 men before they decided to use their dragons on the 4th day of battle. This proved to be a mistake, as they shot down Prince Aemon's Mount Caraxes, resulting in his death from the fall. Enraged by his brother's death and that of Caraxes, Balon Targaryen ordered an all-out attack on the 5th day of battle, where another 20,000 Targaryen men were killed by the Northmen and giants. Prince Balon's mount, Vigor, was killed as well, but he managed to survive the fall. He was subsequently captured, which caused the remaining 20,000 men surrendered and word was sent out to King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne, who quickly flew north to discuss terms. Threatened by Ironborn raiding the Westernlands and the Reach, they had no other choice but to sue for peace. The Iron Throne paid 2 million gold dragons to the north in reparations and left with Balon, the new heir to the Iron Throne. This came to be known as the Northern Massacre. Only 20,000 Northmen and 400 giants died, while the Targaryen army suffered 60,000 casualties, while also losing 2 dragons and the heir to the Iron Throne. This campaign permanently ensured northern independence. Robert's Rebellion. In 280 AC King Rickard Stark visited King's Landing to discuss trade deals between the North and the Iron Throne. He had never visited the city, and in his curiosity he decided to go personally to these negotiations. Aerys had him killed almost immediately after he visited the city and then declared war on the North. In response, Brandon Stark, newly crowned king in the North, gathered 80,000 men to march south. The Westernlands, Stormlands, Vale and Riverlands refused to take part in the war. The Dornish were forced to march due to Elia being a hostage to Aerys, and the Reach Lords were eager for glory, hoping that they could finally stamp down the old gods. Aerys declared all those who refused to fight in the war rebels and declared war on them too. The Vale, Riverlands and Stormlands banded together while Tywin bided his time. The rebel coalition declared Robert king, and with the help of the Northmen they made quick work of the Loyalist army. Lysa Tully married Jon Arryn and Catelyn Tully married Ned Stark, while Cersei Lannister married Robert Baratheon after the Lannister sack of King's Landing. Stark Cadet branches. One house moat Stark rulers moat Kaelin, and were descended from a brother of Atheon Stark, the Hungry Wolf, who had warned by green seers of future Andal invasions by land after his campaign in Andalos. 2 gold Starks they rule the mountain clans. They are one of the richest houses in the north, courtesy of their gold mines. 3 Sea Starks rulers of the Stony Shore, the first line of defense against Ironborn attacks. 4 Skag Stark rulers of Skagos ever since Skagga Sea Lords rebelled against the crown. It was passed on to Stark hands after the fact. House Skag Stark are rich off of trade due to their closeness to Essos. 5 Karstark Cannon House guys, look it up in the wiki if you have to. 6 North Stark rulers of Hardham, another trade city. 7 Snowstark rulers of Queen's Crown. 8 Winter Stark rulers of the Gift. 9 Iron Stark based in the Flint Cliffs. 298 AC. John I woke up to chaos just outside my chambers. I could hear servants screaming at each other in some sort of panic. Not knowing what happening, I quickly woke up and unsheathed my sword, Frost, its dark and smoky ripple patterns shining with the light. I crept slowly towards the door, Ghost right beside me, and just before I managed to open it I heard Lord North Stark shouting at the servants, calming them down. Everything was quiet, and finally I heard him speak directly to me. Prince John, may I enter? I'm afraid I have been sent word about your father. Of course my lord, please enter. I replied confused. He entered, a grim look on his face, and sat down. I am guessing you do not bring good news my lord. I asked him, trepidation in my voice. He answered, my prince, his grace, King Brandon has passed. The ravens say his lungs finally gave out. You are to return to Winterfell for your coronation, your grace. I looked at him in shock. I see. Thank you for informing me. Prepare a ship for me to White Harbor, I must be in Winterfell by the moon's end. Of course, your grace. My father, King Brandon Stark, had suffered from lung problems throughout his whole reign, courtesy of an injury gathered in Robert's rebellion. He had no problems in ruling, but his ability to fight had been severely hampered. He had been ill when I set out for my tour of our kingdom, but he had insisted I still go through with my duty. A prince's tour, which is taken once he reaches 8 and 10 years of age, includes going throughout the whole kingdom, visiting different keeps and spending time with the 3 royal service options, the Royal Army, Navy or the Night's Watch. I had gone throughout the whole realm, visiting all the most important northern houses, Houses Marndale, Bolton, Umber and the various Stark cadet branches, and I had spent time with the Night's Watch and the Royal Army, the only thing left from my tour being our navy, which was led by my uncle Benjen. All in all, I had spent about 2 years touring the kingdom I was to rule. I was nervous, grieving and resigned at the same time. I never wanted to be king, but I was raised for it, and I had to do my duty. At the very least, I would see my family once I got to Winterfell. I was dying to see my cousins once more, and I had my Aunt Lyanna and my 2 uncles to advise me as well. I did not know what kind of king I would be, but I prayed to the old gods for a successful reign. Underscore 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 underscore. My journey from Hardham to White Harbor was pleasant, and from there I made good time from there to Wintertown. As I approached the city I made out the direwolf banner, and a series of guards. I got closer and saw my uncle Eddard, the Fist of Winter, and my cousin Robb. They were dressed in doublets with our family's sigil, with a coat of furs on top of them, as was I. As I got closer I could see their faces. Sadness was present, likely due to the grief of my father's passing, but also happiness and relief, which I assumed was due to my arrival. Beside them stood 2 direwolves, Winter and Grey Wind. When I got to them they all knelt. Your Grace, Wintertown is yours. Ned said. I looked at them, a smile on my face. Uncle, cousin, stand up. I am happy to see you both. I have missed you all. They stood and I quickly hugged them both. We have missed you as well cousin, I am happy you are here said Robb, a smile on his face. Tell me, how have you both been? Has anything significant happened, aside from my father's passing, which I should know of? What is to be done now that I arrived? My uncle took the lead. The realm is secure for now, preparations are being done for your coronation, and if you please we could gather the council now so you can be filled in on the full state of the realm. Our vassals have already been summoned, so you should expect the official coronation in about a moon's turn. I am rested enough, summon the council. I wish to be informed of the crown's state. It shall be done, your grace, replied my uncle. We spent the rest of the ride through Wintertown in silence. I used this to inspect the state of the city. Wintertown was the capital of the north, much like King's Landing for the southerners. Unlike them, however, we Starks had taken precautions and had properly planned the build of the city. High walls surrounded it, manned by men of the royal army, and you could see giants at every entrance to the city. Proper plumbing ensured that the city had good enough hygiene, and eliminated the smell of shit most southern cities reportedly had. Tall buildings all across, and you couldn't see many homeless peasants. They weren't rich, but they had a roof and food, and for most that was enough. As far as the north went, Wintertown was the most populated city, with about 500,000 citizens living in it. White Harbor had about 300,000 citizens, Hardham about 200,000, and Skagos had about 100,000 citizens. These four cities represented about 80% of trade in the Northern Kingdom, making the houses that ruled them rich by association. They mainly focused on trade with Braavos, Pentos and Myr, with a bit of trade with the Southern Kingdom as well. The houses on the western coast had ample defences against Ironborn, courtesy of our navy, but this only applied for northern ships, so traders would typically not venture through that side of the north by sea, dampening the western houses' possible revenues. We finally got to Winterfell, looming over us with its tall walls, tallest in the north after the wall. Waiting to greet me was the rest of my family. There was my Aunt Caitlin. A sweet woman with great love for her children, and my uncle. She personified her house words: family, duty, honor. She never let go of her southern religion, but she understood that her children were of the north, and thus allowed them to choose which gods to worship. On her right side there was Bran in his wheelchair, our generation's three-eyed raven, and besides him was Sansa, Arya and little Rickon. Bran had been born without the use of his legs, and when he was little the previous three-eyed raven, Brynden Bloodraven, had decreed him to be his successor. He was the most powerful greenseer of our generation, and 2 years ago, at the age of 4 and 10, he finally succeeded his predecessor and took his place. Sansa was a copy of her mother, in looks and personality. A southern lady at heart, she even worshipped the Seven. I would be looking for a southern marriage for her soon, as she was already 5 and 10 and flowered. Arya was 2 and 10, and an identical copy to our Aunt Lyanna in both looks and personality. Finally, Rickon was the youngest of them all, only 8 years old. He was an energetic child and wished to be a great warrior. Their direwolves, Summer, Lady, Nymeria and Shaggydog, all stood beside their partners. Standing to Aunt Caitlin's left was my aunt and uncle Benjen and Lyanna. Benjen was our navy's admiral, in charge of 10,000 sailors who protected our coasts, all of which answered directly to the crown. His partner, Cricken, who had a dark almost green-like color, beside him. On the other hand, while my Aunt Lyanna had no official position, she known to all as the unofficial Queen Mother. My own mother, Barbara Dustin, had died in childbirth, and since my aunt had never married, she was too much of a free spirit. She raised me as if I was her own child. Her wolf, Freedom, a big black-furred wolf, beside her as well. Your Grace, Winterfell is yours. We are happy to see you, said Benjen, a smile on his face, mirrored by everyone else. I quickly greeted everyone with a hug and we walked towards the entrance of the castle. Once we entered I addressed them: I will now be meeting with the council to address the state of the realm and begin preparations for my coronation. We will have dinner tonight where I can properly speak to all of you, I said, happiness present in my voice. I quickly turned and proceeded to walk towards the council room, Benjen, Bran and Eddard trailing behind me. Underscore 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 underscore. I opened the door to the council chambers and saw that all the council members, minus uncles Ned and Benjen and Bran, were already seated, waiting for my arrival. A big round table stood in the middle of the room, 9 chairs around it, reserved for each of the council positions. There was mine, reserved for the king, my uncle Eddard's, the Fist of Winter, the northern version of the Hand, the royal treasurer, Wyman Marndaley, the royal justice, master of laws, Roose Bolton, the three-eyed raven, my cousin Bran, the royal admiral, master of ships, my uncle Benjen, the Grand Maester, Aemon Targaryen, the royal general, Great Jon Umber, and the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Jeor Mormont. Wyman Marndaley, Roose Bolton and my uncle Eddard Stark had all been chosen by my father for their posts. My uncle had done a great job ruling for my father, since he was not the most attentive king. He did take part in council meetings, but he mostly left ruling to them. Lord Marndaley was chosen due to his expertise in financial matters, courtesy of his experience ruling White Harbour, the largest trade hub of the north. Lord Bolton was chosen as Royal Justice to appease House Bolton. They were one of the strongest houses in the north and he had served my father faithfully in Robert's Rebellion. The positions of Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, General of the Royal Army and Royal Admiral were all chosen by their respective organizations, with no input from the Crown except in extenuating circumstances, none of which were present in the current appointments. The three-eyed raven was chosen by the previous holder of the title and the Children of the Forest. Finally, the Grand Maester, who took care of the health of the royal family and offered his wisdom, was an appointment made by the Crown. Aemon Targaryen had been granted shelter in the north after he had given up his crown in favor of his younger brother. He joined our northern citadel, which did not shun the use of magic, and eventually made it to the position of Grand Maester. I addressed all of them quickly. Greetings my lords, let us start with the treasury. Lord Marndaley, what is the state of the Crown's treasury and how much will the coronation cost? Your Grace, we currently have 4 million gold wolves in the treasury. The coronation will cost us about 250,000 wolves, between pageantry, food and accommodations for the various lords in attendance. A large expense to be sure, but one we can afford. Very well my lord. That seems like a reasonable number given the occasion. Thank you for your work. Lord Bolton, are there any trials or laws proposed that I should see? Your Grace, there have been no major laws proposed, while the only trials which happened recently were some Isozi who were caught trying to capture slaves on our coasts. I nodded my head at him in recognition of his words and spoke to the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Lord Commander, what is the status of the Night's Watch? We are currently at 10,000 men. Every castle is garrisoned and patrols have captured various bandit groups which had been preying on our citizens. Beyond the wall the Thans captured bandits which were handed over to us, while we found another group close to the haunted forest. South of the wall we are currently hunting a group which call themselves the Warrior Sons. Survivor reports say they number about 100 men and that claim to be on a holy crusade to erase our heathen gods and bring the Seven to the north. They have hit several villages by the White Knife but we have found their hideout. I sent 200 men to kill or capture them to bring them to justice, he reported. I snorted, another idiot group of Septons. Once they are captured I will have to write to King Robert for concessions. Thank you for the report Lord Commander. Lord Umber, how is the army doing? What is the status with the giants? We have 20,000 men ready to march should anything happen. The giants are satisfied with their lands, as always, and they have no need for new weapons and armors. Thank you Lord Umber. Grand Maester, if I may ask, was my father's passing natural, or were there some other forces at play? I uncovered nothing but lung failure as the cause of your father's death, Your Grace. I nodded at that. Uncle Benjen, how is our navy? We have 10,000 sailors at hand. Our western coast is plagued by the occasional Ironborn raid but we are able to quickly drive them back before much damage is done. We have gotten reports that the Ironborn are building up their fleet again, so we are on the lookout for any sudden attacks. Our eastern coast has been clear of pirate attacks for over a year now, and trade with Essos is blooming as a result. He replied, pride evidently present in his voice. I smiled at him, happy that he took to his duties so well. I moved on. Uncle Eddard, do you have anything to add? Your Grace, there are 2 matters of importance left. The Greenseers have declared that our crops will be lower than average for this winter. Aside from that, we must discuss the matter of your marriage, he answered. I gulped, already feeling nervous regarding any betrothal. What are your suggestions on both matters? Regarding our crop yields, we will either have to buy food from Essos or from the south. We might be able to solve this problem and your marriage issue with an ideal match. And who would that be, my lord? Asked Lord Marndale, confusion present in his face. I propose we marry our king to Marjorie Tyrrell, only daughter of the Lord Paramount of the Reach. John 2. 2 weeks had passed since that first council meeting. The northern lords had been slowly arriving ever since. In about 2 more weeks I would be officially crowned as the King of Winter. Preparations were already underway. Food was being brought in the castle, rooms were being prepared for all the lords, and day by day I was getting more and more anxious. All of the lords would be gathering here, every single one. All the northern lords had not gathered together since the War of 73 AC, where King Alaric Dragonkiller Stark had crushed the Targaryens and their dragons. Magic had been getting more and more potent lately, and everyone could feel it. It saturated the air, and the children brought bad omens of things to come. On the subject of marriage, I had decided to go through with my uncle's proposal. The North stood to gain food for winter at almost no expense to ourselves, and we gained a powerful southern ally. Marjorie Tyrrell was said to be very beautiful, and with her came a huge dowry, most of which would be negotiated in food. Given the reputation of her grandmother, she had most likely received a good education on politics and ruling, and while the North was different than the South, it would surely do her well. I was still nervous about my coronation. Would I be a good king? Did I have what it takes to rule? I was even worried about how a southern marriage would make me look in front of my lords. Seeing my insecurities, Maester Aemon imparted on me a piece of wisdom which I will never forget. You are worried about how your lords will view you, are you not? If you shall be a good king. Allow me to give you one piece of counsel, he said. The same counsel I once gave my brother when we parted for the last time. He was 33 when the Great Council chose him to mount the Iron Throne. A man grown with sons of his own, yet in some ways still a boy. Egg had an innocence to him, a sweetness we all loved. Kill the boy within you, I told him the day I took ship to the north. It takes a man to rule. An Aegon, not an egg. Kill the boy and let the man be born. He said while feeling my face, old memories living out in his mind. You are almost half the age that Egg was at his rise to kingship. You will find little joy in it, but I know you have the strength to do the things that must be done. Kill the boy, Jon Stark. Winter is almost upon us. Kill the boy and let the man be born. Underscore 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 underscore. It was the morning of my coronation. All the lords had already arrived, and the leaders of the giants and the children of the forest were also present. I was in my chambers when my aunt came in, a huge smile on her face. She came up to me and engulfed me in a hug. Then she went and greeted Ghost as well. Look at you. A man grown now, even more handsome than your father. A soon-to-be king. I am incredibly proud of you, Jon. And how are you, Ghost? You look great as well, she said, while scratching his fur. Hello, Aunt. How are you? What are you doing here? I asked, happy but with confusion. Oh, so I need an excuse to see my nephew, do I? I guess I am not wanted here, she said sarcastically. Ha, you will always be welcome to speak with me. Do not worry, Aunt. I replied, smiling. Good, it better stay that way. In regards as to what I'm doing here, well, I just wanted to see you. How are you feeling, are you ready? She asked, smiling but with a bit of worry in her voice. I am ready. I don't know if I will be good or not, but I will do my best. To be perfectly honest, I am just a bit anxious, but nothing so bad that it will hamper me. Frankly, I just want to get it over with. You know, your father was said the exact same thing before his coronation. It was a lot more tense due to the war, but in regards to kingship, he always felt as if he wasn't suited for it. Often he said that Ned would be the better king, and more than once he offered it to Ned, just to be refused. I was shocked. I had always thought my father was comfortable in his kingship. He was very confident, and at least from what I remembered, wasn't one to second guess himself. I know it may seem difficult for you to imagine, but your father doubted himself just as much as any man. The mark of a great king isn't to know everything, but to know what you don't know, she said. You have advisors for a reason. Never take an uninformed decision, she continued. I'll tell you the single most important piece of counsel my father, your grandfather, told all of my siblings and I when we were younger. What makes a great king? We all had different answers. Strength or wisdom being the most common answers. We were all wrong. A great king does have all of those, yes, but the most important trait a great king could have is humbleness, she said. She has the right of it, said my Uncle Ned, peering through the door. I was going to look for you, the coronation is to start soon, but I believe finishing this lecture is more important. Lionel, may I finish this lecture, he said, laughing. Go ahead. Very well. As Lionel said, there are many qualities a great king should have, but humbleness is the most important. It takes strength to admit you do not know something. Real wisdom is achieved once you acknowledge that there is still more to learn. Never conform yourself to what you know. If you do not know something, read or ask someone who does know. Do you understand me, John? He said. I understand more than you know. Thank you both, truly. You have put my mind at ease. I said gratefully. Then let us go. We have a coronation to go to, said Ned, a minuscule smirk in his face. Underscore 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 underscore. The doors to the throne room were opened, and I walked straight through the middle, Ghost trailing right behind me. On my left and right I could make out all the lords and heirs, and just at the front I could see the leader of the giants and the children of the forest, Mag the Mighty and Leaf. Right at the end of the room I could make it out. The Throne of Winter. Made purely of ice, it stood at an elevated height, with 4 steps leading up to the seat. It had twin direwolf sculptures, one on each armrest, and the throne was a bright blue color which never seemed to fade, courtesy of one of the great many spells woven into it. It never melted, and it was said that only a Stark could sit comfortably in it, due to the magic in our blood. I had never sat on it myself, so I didn't really know what to expect. Behind it were various Stark trophies hanging. Among them, 3 stood out. Red Rain, a Valyrian steel sword which belonged to House Drum, was the first thing you could see. It currently had no wielder, and as such was hanging on the wall until someone worthy could get it. Joramun's horn was the second trophy present, an object which could bring down the wall with one blow. Finally, and most certainly the most important, was the Fist of the First Men. A one-handed warhammer etched in runes so old not even the children knew of them. It was said to be the weapon Brandon the Builder used to combat the others. It was the single most important possession of House Stark, so important that no king had ever grabbed it since it was hung up, thousands of years ago. Once I finally got to the end of the room, I started climbing the steps to the throne. Once I finally sat down, I experienced a feeling of calmness. Everything felt perfect and all my worries were stashed away. I faintly heard the rest of the speech my Uncle Eddard was giving until my cousin Rob walked closer and handed him a long dragon glass container. Instantly all of my focus was back on the proceedings. I knew what that was. Your Grace, it is time for you to leave Frost, the Sword of Princes, behind, and take in hand the Sword of Kings, he said. I handed him Frost and he opened the black box and the temperature instantly dropped. A crystal blue sword oozing cold could be seen. It was a bastard sword made of pure ice, from the handle and guard to the top of the blade. Every Northman knew what it was, ice, the Sword of Kings. It was made with foul magic, having been the blade of the Night King himself, and it was taken as a trophy once he was defeated by Brandon the Builder. It had been passed from king to king throughout 8,000 years, all with a single purpose in mind, to not forget the others. The North remembers, Starks most of all. Seated, I took the sword in hand and felt power course through me. I had never felt greater relief than at that moment. The sword was known to pick its wielders, and those who were rejected could not hold it due to the extreme cold they felt while having it in hand. In comparison, to me it felt like it was made for me to wield it. I felt an extreme calm while handling it. Once I snapped out of my sword-induced stupor, I saw my uncle grabbing the crown of winter. It was made up of rune-encrusted weirwood. It had 8 spikes, and right in the middle of the crown the face of a direwolf can be found. It was said that this was also the original crown of winter worn by Brandon the Builder, with each spike appearing after 1,000 years had passed. We did not have a way of verifying this, but the runes encrusted in the crown were powerful according to the children. Finally, he placed it on me and said, "With this I name you, Jon Stark, King of Winter, Lord Protector of the North, King of the Children, Giants and the First Men." After that, all the lords, giants and children knelt and spoke the following in the old tongue. "To Winterfell we pledge our faith. Hearth and heart and harvest we yield up to you, my lord. Our swords and spears and arrows are yours to command. Grant mercy to our weak, help our helpless, and justice to all, and we shall never fail you. We swear it by earth and water. We swear it by bronze and iron. We swear it by ice and fire. Margaery I." It was a perfectly normal day. I was gossiping with my ladies-in-waiting and my grandmother, as I usually did, when my father came rushing into my room, looking for my grandmother. He ran towards her and picked her up in a hug. "Mother! Mother! Mother! We did it, Margaery is going to become queen. She's going to be queen. My daughter a queen." My eyes widened, surprised. I hadn't known we were in negotiations with the Iron Throne. Out of the corner of my eyes I could see my ladies in a similar state of shock. Father then noticed me in the corner and put down my grandmother to come rushing to me. He picked me up in one of his bear hugs and screamed, "Margaery! Margaery! You're gonna be queen. I'm so proud, you'll be the most beautiful queen they ever had. Daughter, mother, come, we must tell your mother and brothers. Today is a glorious day," he exclaimed. "Mace, you big oaf, put your poor daughter down and explain this nonsense. We haven't entered any talks with the Baratheons for a betrothal with Prince Joffrey, so what are you on about?" Olenna asked, confusion written on her face. "Not the Iron Throne, mother, even better. Eddard Stark, the Fist of Winter, has just sent us a raven proposing a match between Margaery and their new king, Jon Stark," said my father, a huge smile in his face. Gasps could be heard all around the room, and it was at that moment that my father realized we were in company. Embarrassed, he quickly asked the ladies to clear the room so he could speak to us in private. Once they left, my grandmother spoke in the most serious voice I had ever heard her speak. "Mace, let me see that raven scroll." He handed it over to her, all three of us silent while she read it. When she finished, she handed it over to me, and then I read it as well. "Mace, we have to close this deal. We must. A Tyrell as queen in the north. That would be greater than even queen of the Six Kingdoms. Gather the family, son, we must discuss this properly." My head was spinning. Me, queen in the north. A woman more powerful than even Cersei Lannister. Every noble learns about the north and how powerful the Starks were. I would join the most powerful house in Westeros. I could hardly concentrate on anything at that moment except the butterflies in my stomach. Underscore 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 underscore. All of the Tyrells were gathered in one room. In front of me I could see my father seated with my grandmother and mother to each of his sides. Seated to my right was Willers, the heir to Highgarden, and to my left there was Loras. Seated to his left was Garland. Grandmother began to speak. "We have been proposed an alliance by the Crown of Winter. Margaery's hand for our food for winter. I think this seems pretty straightforward. It's the best offer anyone could ever hope for, I say we take it." Everyone sang me and father were shocked. To be queen in the north was to be the most powerful woman in the world. Starks had ruled as kings for 8,000 years, almost twice more time than most houses had even existed for. They commanded more than 100,000 men, and if the legends were to be believed, they even commanded magic, giants and the children of the forest. No other house could boast half of what the Starks and most houses in the north could. A thoughtful but excited look on his face, Willers asked, "What else are they asking for aside from a dowry of grain?" Surely that is not all they are asking. Grandmother replied, all they are asking is that Marjorie renounce the 7 who are one in favor of the old gods. No child of hers shall be taught of the 7-pointed star. They shall only know the old gods. A small price to pay given the rewards for such an action. I replied. None of our family was that pious, so something like this wouldn't have bothered them. Indeed, sister, said Garland, happy for his sister. We should of course send our acceptance by Raven along with plans to ride out to Winterfell at once. Father said. Garland, you shall rule in my stead as Lord of Highgarden. Willers, Aeleri, Mother and Loras will go north with us. We shall leave in a week's time. I'll tell the Maester to send ravens to our vassals informing them of this move. Quickly, we must begin preparations, he finished with a boast, a huge smile on his face. He then carried my mother out of the room, both of them laughing, to celebrate in their special way. Underscore 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 underscore. Marjorie, which are the Stark cadet branches? Asked my cousin Eleanor, her voice kind of shaky due to all the bumps in the road, which were keenly felt inside the carriage. We were about to enter the neck. Crannog men around us guiding our way through. Moat Starks, Gold Starks, Sea Starks, Skag Starks, Car Starks, North Starks, Snow Starks, Winter Starks and Iron Starks. I replied and saw her nod and smile at my correct answer. My cousin Eleanor was my head lady in waiting. At 6 and 10 with a nice figure, she had beautiful blonde hair and a very pretty face. A definite catch, she was coming north with me in hopes for a northern husband. And what do each of those houses rule? She continued. House Moat Stark rules over Moat Cailin, House Gold Stark rules the mountain clans, House Sea Stark rules the stony shore, House Skag Stark rules Skagos, House Car Stark rules Carhold, House North Stark rules Hardham, House Snow Stark rules Queen's Crown, House Winter Stark rules the Gift and House Iron Stark is based in the Flint Cliffs. Are you finished with the cadet branches, Eleanor? I think it's time to go to the other vassals, said Mega, my other cousin. She unfortunately was cursed with a burly figure, likely due to how much sweets she liked to eat. She was 5 and 10. Almost Mega. Just a few more questions and we can move on to another topic. Eleanor replied. Now, why does House Stark have feud with House Lannister? About 20 years after the doom of Valyria, Robard Stark, granduncle to Torrhen Stark, sailed to Valyria. There he found a cache of Valyrian steel weapons, one of which was Brytraw, the Lannister ancestral sword. Once they got back to Winterfell, he distributed the weapons among the houses which accompanied him into the venture. He decided to mock the Lannisters by giving House Gold Stark the Lannister ancestral sword. There have been numerous offers from various Lannisters over the years in order to buy it back, but all of them have been refused. I replied, a smirk on my face thinking about the humiliation for House Lannister over the fact. Perfect answer, Marjorie. Eleanor replied. Underscore 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 underscore. Again Mega. I asked annoyedly. Yes cousin, you already know the cadet branches by heart, but you still stutter over the other northern lords. Fine, ask me then. Of course, she chirped happily. Who were the Red Kings? I do not like their history all that much, but nevertheless I will have to deal with them soon. They were Boltons. Eventually they were defeated and subjugated by the Starks. The Boltons are famous for their flaying of their enemies, a practice which continues to this day. Their words are our blades are sharp. They also have a Valyrian steel sword, named Blissful Mercy. And what is their unofficial motto? She asked, fear and disgust on her face due to thinking about the Boltons. I gulped. A naked man holds many secrets, a flayed man holds none. Correct, my lady. We stayed in silence after that. The Bolton history had proven to be a bit too gory for our tastes. A while after that we heard numerous gasps of surprise. Curious, we opened the window of our carriage. I was amazed. Up ahead we could see one of the largest castles I had ever seen. 20 towers surrounded it, each manned by multiple men. Even I, with my limited knowledge on military matters, could see how the Targaryen army of 73 AC failed at their attempt at conquest. Fully manned, this castle was impossible to take. To think, I was still missing Winterfell. I couldn't wait to see more of my future home. Underscore 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 underscore. I was riding on a horse, heavy furs on me to shield me from the cold. I had decided I wanted to see more of the north, so I would be riding ahead on horseback with my brother Loras. We were close to Winterfell now, and Loras couldn't stop talking about how excited he was to see all of the different legendary swords in possession of House Stark. It is said that in the north alone there are 15 Valyrian steel weapons. The Starks reportedly have 4, those being Ice, Frost, Red Rain and Frostis. It's even said that Ice, the sword of the king, has spells woven into it. That bit is rubbish of course, but could you imagine it to be true? I can't wait to see them and spar with the Northmen. He screamed suddenly, pointing forward. Our whole party looked to where he was pointing and we were all amazed and terrified. Giants, actual giants 15 feet tall carrying huge bows or riding mammoths. It was a thing of legends. No one south of the neck really believed in giants anymore. We thought it was a thing of the past, like dragons, yet here they were, roaming free. A red-haired, long-faced man with a stocky build rode out towards us, about 20 guards behind him, sword at his hilt. A huge grey-furred wolf trailing right behind him. He was laughing as he approached us and greeted us boisterously. "Never seen giants before, have you? It's always funny seeing people's reactions," he said while smiling. "My apologies, I just couldn't help myself. I am Robb Stark, son of Eddard Stark. This," he gestured towards the humongous wolf, "is my partner Grey Wind. I volunteered to accompany you for the rest of the ride," he said. I found him quite handsome, and he looked to be about 8 and 10, about my age. My father looked at the wolf nervously. "It is good to see you, my lord. I am Mace Tyrell. This," he said, pointing towards me, "is my daughter Marjorie. These are my sons Willers and Loras. If I may, is it safe having that beast so close to us? Is it not a danger?" he finished. "Every Stark has a direwolf partner, my lord Tyrell. You'd be wise to get used to them, since you'll no doubt see more of them once we arrive to Winterfell," said Robb, a smirk on his face. "Now please, follow me," he said, and rode forwards, us following from behind. I gulped a bit at that. Every legend said about the North and Starks was turning out to be true. First there were giants. Giants. 5 and 10 feet tall, riding humongous heavily furred creatures the Northerners called mammoths. Now it seems that every Stark also has direwolves as well. Lord Robb's wolf was larger than a pony and it had a fierce look. Would the king's be any different? I decided I needed to speak with him. I rode forwards to Lord Robb. I was curious. He was my betrothed's cousin, so he surely knew at least a bit of him, or could at least help me understand a bit more of the North. "Lord Robb, if I could be so bold, could you tell me a bit about the king?" I asked coyly, trying to charm him. It is no problem. King Jon is, well, he is a good man. One of the greatest swordsmen I've ever seen as well. He's kind and humble, so you should not fear speaking or asking him anything. He's to be a great king," said Robb, admiration plain in his voice, something which surprised me. It looked like he was wholeheartedly supportive of his cousin, no jealousy present. It baffled me a bit. It was as if he had no ambitions for power. "All of the Starks understand that this is a big change for you, therefore we will be willing to help you should you need anything. You need only but ask," he continued, smiling as he said so. Another thing which baffled me as well. Why was he so helpful? He was royalty, second in line to the throne after his father, and yet he volunteered to do something as mundane as accompany us to get to Wintertown. It was completely different from what I was expecting. I thought back on when I met Renly Baratheon, whom my brother Loras had squired for. He certainly wasn't snobbish by any means, and was very charismatic, but he did have a certain amount of pride that was expected of a member of a royal family. Here this Stark seemed to lack it. I found it perplexing. After that we rode in silence until Wintertown was in sight. Tall walls manned by men all around, with Winterfell looming behind it, it was truly a sight. It didn't smell nearly as bad as King's Landing as well, which was a pleasant surprise. We were met by some men at arms, who told us we were to be escorted to Winterfell at once. As we rode through the streets I found myself staring at everything. Almost no beggars, decent buildings for small folk and a marked military presence inside the city kept it very peaceful. I felt my respect towards the Starks growing. We kept riding, the castle becoming bigger to our eyes as we approached it. When we finally got to the main gates we were greeted by another long-faced man, this time with black hair, kept in a ponytail, another Direwolf next to him. Another Stark I assumed. He waited until we dismounted our horses, or in my grandmother and mother's case, got out of the carriage. I welcome you to Winterfell, Lord Tyrell, Lady Margaery. I am Benjen Stark, Commander of the Royal Navy. A pleasure to see you, he said, smile in his face. The ride was pleasant, I hope, he asked, looking at Lord Robb. Very pleasant, my Lord Stark. Wondrous sights indeed. Why, I thought giants and your direwolves were the stuff of legends, yet I've seen both in the same day, responded my father. Oh, shut up, Mace. Gods, that's enough flattery for me. Lord Stark, can we go inside now? My old bones can hardly withstand the cold, said Olenna, annoyance present in her voice. Benjen Stark looked more amused than offended at the display by my grandmother. Of course, my lady. We are to present you in the throne room, and after you shall be showed to your chambers. He led us to the throne room, and once we got there we were greeted by large doors. I could hear my grandmother speak softly to me in my ear, Margaery, do your best. You look lovely, don't worry. I looked back at her and she was smiling reassuringly. I looked back up at the doors which were slowly opening up. I put on my best smile and mentally prepared myself. Once they opened I saw him and my eyes involuntarily widened. He was seated comfortably in his throne, left hand in his lap, right hand on the armrest. A white direwolf the size of a horse resting at the feet of the throne, its red eyes gazing back at us. The throne itself was a thing of beauty, blue in color with intricate direwolf designs in each armrest, runes carved in the backrest. It was blue, in color, and now that I was closer, I had started walking forward without even noticing. To it I saw that it was in fact made of actual ice. I had no idea how that was possible. Resting to the right side of the throne there was a sword which radiated power. Like the throne of winter, it was made of pure ice. It looked like a bastard sword, although I wasn't sure, I am not that knowledgeable on martial matters. I finally forced myself to look away from the seemingly magical objects in front of me, and I looked up at his face. My first thought was that he was certainly handsome, as much as his cousin Robb if not more. Classic Stark features were clearly present in his face, long-faced with black hair. His hair was a bit curly and it reached down to his shoulders. He also had a beard, which made him look more rugged, which I certainly appreciated. It was his expression which made me pause. Completely unreadable, to someone not paying attention he could appear to be bored. I wasn't fooled though. His eyes were gazing at us with great intensity. I took a step forward and started speaking, my best smile in place. Your Grace, it is an honor to be here. I have heard tales of your strength and bravery and have come to love you from afar. I am ecstatic to finally be able to see you in the flesh. I finished and waited for his response. Then I waited some more. He was just looking at me. Then, without warning, he let out a laugh, catching us off guard. I'm sure you have, my lady. He said, a smirk suddenly appearing on his face. You are even more beautiful than they say. I look forward to knowing you, Lady Margaery, he said with a smile. Now, let us retire to our chambers. We shall speak more on the morrow. Tyrion I. 7 hells, another headache. I really ought to stop drinking, shouldn't I? It can't be worth suffering through these terrible mornings, can't it? Oh wait, it can. I say, smiling sardonically as I pour myself a glass of wine from a pitcher in my room. A toast, to every drunkard dwarf in the world, and I gulped the whole glass down. Dornish red, I think. One of my favorites. Certainly better than what they make down in the Uber. Too bad my father did what he did, if not I would be drowning in wine and women in Dawn. That would be the life, wouldn't it? Well, I should probably get out and make some rounds throughout the castle. Who knows what new secrets the Red Keep will reveal today. I quickly got dressed and went out. I decided I wanted to see my niece and nephew, the younger one. They were always good company, very sweet children, completely unlike their mother or Godspeed Joffrey. That right there was epitome of a prick. Woe to the 6 kingdoms once he became king. I got to my nephew's chambers and saw Sir Meryn Trant standing in front of it. "Hello Sir Meryn, could you please tell my nephew that I wish to speak with him?" I asked, nicely. "Do it yourself, dwarf," he sneered at me. I smiled. "Of course good sir, it must be incredibly hard standing around a door all day, of course you can't do something as simple as announcing me. Thank God my nephew has man of such skill guarding him." I smiled mockingly with a half bow. Seeing he wasn't going to entertain me anymore, I went up to the door and knocked. "Tommen, may I come in? It's your Uncle Tyrion." "Uncle? Of course, come in. Myrcella is here too," he answered. I entered and was rapidly assaulted with hugs from both of them. "Uncle," both of them shouted as they hugged me. "Have you heard the news about the Tyrells, uncle?" asked Myrcella, a knowing look on her face. Suddenly I was confused. "No, what happened, niece?" I asked, perplexed. "The Lady Margaery has just been betrothed to the king in the north, Jon Stark." Joffrey got furious once he heard the news and mother looked like she sucked on a sour lemon. She answered. "Oh my." I answered. "Oh my indeed." This was huge. This was ginormous. It had been hundreds of years since the king in the north had married a southern lady, and this wasn't just any southern lady, but the daughter of the second most powerful house in the south. What would happen due to this, I didn't know, but it certainly didn't spell well for House Lannister. Myrcella looked worried at my expression and asked. "What do you think of this, uncle?" "I think, I need a drink, niece." "Tommen, why don't you go to your mother and tell her I'll see her soon?" "Okay uncle," he nodded and ran off to find his mother. Tommen was a sweet child, only 9 years old. He, like both his siblings, had the classic Lannister blonde hair. Myrcella was 4 and 10, only 2 years younger than Joffrey, the little prick. She already had a mind for politics, not unlike her grandfather, and dare I say me. Intelligent without the enormous Lannister pride present in her mother, she was a great conversationalist. I enjoyed these conversations with her when we talked on the events in the kingdoms. This would certainly prove interesting. I poured me a glass of wine, and gulped it. Then I poured myself another one and drank half of it. "Now, Myrcella, tell me, what do you think first? Why must you drink wine so often?" "It can't be good for you to drink so much," she said, sniffing. "It's just wine, and I am a person who drinks. People who drink need to keep drinking," I said, my wisdom seemingly lost on her. "Fine. I think that this alliance is dangerous. I do not know if the North knows of Joffrey's passion for the faith, but he has certainly made his opinion on them clear. The fact that the Tyrells, the second most powerful house in the south after the Lannisters, just allied with them sends a powerful message. Throughout this whole debacle, the fact that Willas Tyrell has been betrothed to Talatali has been swept under the rug. With Aeleri Hightower being the current Lady of Highgarden and Atali to be the next one, plus the fact that they are cousins by blood to the Redwynes due to the Queen of Thorns, the Tyrells have the guaranteed loyalty of their 3 most powerful vassals. The remaining dissent in the Reach will either stamp itself out or be inconsequential should anything happen, she said, smiling but with a hint of worry. Do not forget the fact that the Lady Margaery was the top candidate to marry Joffrey. Now the crown has lost a powerful potential ally. Not to mention, the Tully's loyalty is not guaranteed. Do not forget that Eddard Stark's wife is a Tully by birth, and she has given House Stark 5 sons and daughters. I hope your brother is wise enough to avoid war with the North once he becomes king, because if not the kingdom will bleed. underscore 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 underscore. I was in front of Circe's chambers, Cerberus standing in front of the door. Unlike Cimmerian, he was actually alright. Utterly incompetent of course, but not a bad person. He just stepped out of the way and I entered, unannounced. "Sister. How are you today? Oh, I so missed you," I said loudly, a mocking smile in my face. She faced me, a furious look on her face. "Why are you in here, you little beast?" she sneered at me. "Oh, but to talk news. Haven't you heard the latest gossip?" I responded smiling mockingly. "If you are here to talk about that Tyrell whore's wedding, then you might as well leave." "But why? Isn't it just magnificent? The first and third most powerful houses in Westeros allying themselves." She sneered at me again. "House Lannister is the most powerful house in Westeros. Where is your pride as a lion?" she asked me, pride rolling off of her. I rolled my eyes. "You were always the stupidest Lannister. Not even our dear father believes that. Now I ask you, what are we to do now? Who is Joffrey to marry? Joffrey's marriage is not important right now. In the future, he will marry someone worthy of him, maybe a Lannister cousin. Should the worst come to pass, he'll just marry Stannis's disfigured daughter just to put some babes in her. I would have never allowed him to marry those upjumped stewards anyways. To think, they'll be selling their daughter to a bunch of barbarians," she finished with a laugh. I looked at her, face blank. Then a small smirk came up to my face. I wiped it from my face. Then another one came up, a bit bigger this time. I wiped it off as well. I looked up at Cersei. She had an expectant look on her face. I just couldn't help it. "Ha ha 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 ha," I bellowed out. She had a furious look on her face, which just made me laugh harder. "Ha ha 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 ha," I finished, my stomach hurting from how hard I had laughed. "I cannot believe you honestly said that. A Lannister cousin. Like we don't have enough Lannisters in the capital, not to mention there would be no purpose it. And you really think Stannis will allow his only daughter to marry that madman you call your son?" I asked incredulously. "He will do his duty as shall his daughter should it come to it. And my son is no madman. He just has a certain passion for the faith," she answered. "He is Baelor the Blessed mixed with Maegor the Cruel. How you don't see it I don't know," I shot back. "He is not cruel, he is strong. A strong future king. Something you would be wise to remember. And if his piousness bothers you so much, blame Robert and Jon Arryn, not me." At that I stayed in silence for a bit. Joffrey had killed a pregnant cat and opened its belly when he was just 7 years old. After several more reprehensible actions, beating a servant boy half to death for no apparent reason, having a peasant who walked too close to him killed and numerous other more acts, at age 10 Robert gave up on him as an heir and decided to disinherit him. Before it was declared, Cersei begged Robert to give Joffrey one last chance, where Jon Arryn, being a pious man himself, suggested Joffrey be fostered in the Great September of Baelor with the High Septon. I imagine this must have been done to curb his sadistic tendencies, and prevent his father's lecherous ones. Whatever the reason, it was done. Now instead of a spoiled sadistic boy who hid behind his mother's skirts, Joffrey was a delusional fool who genuinely thought he was the warrior reborn, here in Westeros to finish spreading the Seven and destroy the old gods. He really didn't care much about the rest of the values preached by Septons. He was still cruel, but only to those he considered heathens. Frankly put, he was a zealot, and a zealot for a future king was a dangerous thing. To be honest, I think he was also jealous of the Starks, and the power they wield. To be fair, even with all these things, the fostering did have some positive effects on him. At 6 and 10, he now practiced with the sword, and was a rather good warrior. He didn't have the strength to use a warhammer, he was too slim for that, but he could dance around most opponents with ease, skill which he must have inherited from his father. "You know he will be furious about this, don't you?" I told her seriously. She sighed. "Of course he will be, but he will deal with it." "I hope he does, sister. I hope he does." underscore 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 underscore. I was walking back to my chambers to retire for the day. I was excited too. I had just finished speaking with Lord Baelish and he had guaranteed me 3 whores for the night. I had asked him of his opinion on what was happening, and all he did was smirk and tell me that it was interesting, whatever that meant. At least he would be providing me with entertainment later on in the day. What was truly interesting was Varys' reaction to me when I asked him what he thought. I had just finished drinking with the Greyjoy boy, and what a poor sight he was, even compared to me, when I crossed paths with the infamous spider. I smelled him first, his disgustingly powerful perfume assaulting my senses as I saw him a couple of paces in front of me. He looked worried, something which caught me by surprise, and was sweating, probably from going to and from various places to receive his little bird's reports from the north. I caught up to him and quickly asked him what he thought on what was happening up north and was surprised by his response. "That shit again," he exclaimed angrily. I looked up to him confused. Never had I seen him react to something in this manner. He sighed, calming himself down. "I'm sorry my friend, it has been a long day. The news just got here I'm afraid, and thus I've been running around all day to find out everything I can on the current situation in the north." "It's been a difficult day," he said, smiling tiredly. Somehow I had the feeling that he wasn't angry at being overworked, but something else, but frankly by this point in the day I was too drunk to care. I nodded at him and excused myself to my chambers, where the 3 whores were already waiting. I smirked, it was good to be a Lannister. Margaery too. It was the day after our arrival. After our introductions in the throne room we had been led to our chambers. I was to meet the king sometime today. Right now I was just waiting to be called while speaking to my grandmother. We talked of unimportant things which eventually led to our impressions of the king. "Jon Stark is a dangerous man," said grandmother. "You won't be able to manipulate him with your looks, dear. You'll have to make yourself useful to him in some way," she finished. That was the impression I had as well. He seemed pleased enough with my looks, but he spared my body no more than a few glances at most. I said, "I think flattery will get me nowhere as well." Did you notice he laughed when I told him how I'd heard of him? He is an intelligent man. Yes, he is. He'll make a good husband, Marge. At least we know he'll be kind to you. Starks have always had good reputations, she said. Yes, I hope that is the case. I'm sorry grandmother, but I can't ignore it anymore. They have magic. Real magic. Did you take a look at his sword? The throne. The giants. His wolf. This is madness. Everything the Maesters said was fantasy is true. How can that be? I asked, amazed but curious. Because they fear magic, dear. Just as the Septons, the Southern Maesters have long worked to suppress knowledge of magic in Westeros. Not many know of this, even I know only because of our alliance with House Hightower through your mother. But yes, I had never imagined that all of the legends in the north were true. Why, next we'll see a couple children of the forest, she finished laughing, half serious. How do I go about this? Soon we'll have our first conversation, and I must make a good first impression, but none of the tricks or techniques I know will work on him. What do I do? I asked, feeling worried. Olenna stayed quiet for a couple of moments, and then suddenly she said, "Be yourself." Huh? Be myself? Yes dear, be yourself. Let me tell you something. A long time ago I had the pleasure of meeting the Rickard Stark, Jon Stark's grandfather. He was blunt, stern-faced and tolerated no pageantry. It is my impression that, like most Northerners, Jon Stark is the same. I think being authentic with him is the best thing you can do, she said, smiling. It isn't as if all you can do is smile and look pretty, Margaery. I should know, I taught you, she said, giving me a knowing look. Answer honestly whatever questions he asks, and be direct when speaking to him. You won't be able to manipulate this one, at least not for now, so strive to make him acknowledge you as an equal, she finished. I felt confused. My whole life up until this moment had been preparing me to use my looks and mind to gain an advantage. To manipulate and charm men, and suddenly I'm told to forget all of that. At the same time, I felt it made sense. I knew I was good, yet even on Robb Stark my charms hadn't really been all that effective. If nothing else, I decided I should give it a try. Very well. Thank you for your counsel, grandmother, truly. I said, a grateful smile in place. Just then there was a knocking sound on the door. A servant girl, about 1 and 10 with dark black hair, entered and said, "My ladies, the king wishes to see the Lady Margaery by the glass houses. May I lead you there?" "Of course," I said. She smiled and motioned for me to follow. I looked back at grandmother, but she just smiled at me and mouthed at me to go. I walked through the hallways, which were scarcely decorated aside from the occasional painting, while the servants were giving us weird looks, almost as if they were trying hard not to laugh. We passed the courtyard, where the men-at-arms and some of the knights we brought were training, and finally we got to the glass houses, a beautiful garden waiting for me. He was leaning against the wall, smirk on his face, his huge white direwolf standing beside him. He was wearing a black doublet, direwolves stitched onto it. A sheathed sword was hanging on the side of his hips. He opened his mouth to speak and, "Arya Stark," he said, letting out a bellowing laugh, a huge smile on his face. I just looked around, confused. The servant girl who was escorting us suddenly let out a huge laugh as well and said, "What?" I just wanted to see what they were like. "Nothing wrong with that," she finished, smirk clearly visible on her face. "Leave us, Arya, I need to speak with them," he said. She smiled and just left, hop in her step. "I'm sorry about that. She is Arya Stark, my cousin. She's got too much wolf's blood, so she isn't the most behaved child," he said, an apologetic smile on his face. "Wolf's blood?" I asked, confused. "Us Starks are said to have wolf's blood, which is what allows us to bond to our partners, like Ghost here," he said, pointing to his wolf. It looked at me and started getting closer. I drew back slowly, frightened. Jon put his arm on my shoulder. "Do not worry, he just wants you to pet him. He won't harm you," he said. I stretched my arm out and dragged my hand slowly across his fur. Ghost suddenly raised his head, red eyes gazing back at me. Then, he just licked my hand and went back to Jon's side. I looked back at my betrothed, he was smiling. "Ghost likes you. Direwolves are hard creatures to fool, so if he approves of you, I guess I've no reason to fear. Tell me, do you have any questions?" he asked, smiling at me. "I've many questions to ask you. I'm not sure where to start," I said. He just looked on, and then smiled reassuringly. "How do you bond with your wolves?" "Magic," he responded. I looked on, but that was all he said. "Fine then. I see." Another question followed. "How is your throne maintained when it is made of ice? And how does it not bother you to sit on it?" "Magic," he answered. I was starting to get annoyed. "How is the sword you had in the throne room made of ice? And wouldn't it shatter easily?" I said. He just smirked. "Mag, don't say that again, please," I said, a bit angry by now. He just smirked at me. There we go. What happened to the perfect southern lady I saw yesterday? I looked at him and noticed his smile. So that was what he was doing, purposely riling me up. I understood now. Someone told me I should be direct with Northmen. I'm said they don't appreciate flattery or honeyed words. I answered. You have the right of it. We don't. We are to marry, I would like we be at least cordial with each other. Tell me, do you still wish to know the things you have asked me? I nodded at him. Very well. Your first question, how do we bond with our wolves? The answer is magic, but it is more complicated than that. I imagine your maesters have never told you of wargs. Am I right? He asked. I think I've heard of a petty king here in the north who was defeated by your family long ago. He was called the Warg King if I'm not mistaken. I answered back. Wargs, or skin changers, can slip into the skins of other animals, usually those to which they are bonded. When the Warg King was defeated by the Starks, his daughters were taken as wives by our family, ensuring we gain their abilities. I myself can only walk into Ghost, but I know of wargs such as Varami Sixskins who can control multiple animals. Not to mention the Three-Eyed Raven, who can change into the skin of any animal, and even control simple-minded people, he explained. Now I had even more questions. Not to mention I was more than a little scared of Bran Stark after hearing of what he could do. Excuse me, but is the Three-Eyed Raven not the northern equivalent of the Master of Whisperers? Is that how he gathers information? By using animals? I asked confusedly. He is, but at the same time he is so much more. The Three-Eyed Raven is the most powerful Greenseer alive. Every Greenseer can walk, but not every warg has the green sight. It's an important distinction you should know. A Greenseer is one who can see glimpses of the past or future. The Three-Eyed Raven can see the past at will as it was witnessed by the werewolves, while he can also receive clearer visions of what's to come. I was amazed. To think such things were possible. He continued speaking. To answer your question as to how he goes about his duties, then yes, just like that. Tell me, what do you know of Brynden Rivers, bastard son of Aegon the Unworthy? He was known as Bloodraven, and was one of, if not the greatest Master of Whisperers there have been. It is said that he had 1,000 eyes and one. He was exiled from the Southern Kingdom due to his actions against the Black Fires. I answered back, confused at his question. Before my cousin took up his duties, the previous Three-Eyed Raven was him. He was maintained alive by the children throughout all of this time while he searched for a successor. He had to choose wisely, since these next few years will be trying. Winter is coming, he said with a grave look on his face, his voice heavy. I was confused, since I did not know what he could be talking about of the future, but I kept quiet. It must have shown on my face, because he said, "Do not worry, you will be informed on everything you need to know in the coming time, but now is not the right time. Now then, you wished to know of my throne and sword. The throne of winter was created a long time ago with the aid of the children. It is their magic which preserves it," he said. I thought back on what he had just said, and there was something which confused me. You talk of the children. Tell me, they can't be the children of the forest, can't they? Or are they another one of the legends which have come alive since I passed the neck? I asked, half serious. He just smirked. Those are exactly the ones I speak of. They still live, albeit not many remain. You will meet one soon enough, I bet, he said, smiling, amused at my wide-eyed expression. And, what about your sword? The one made of ice you had in the throne room. Was that made by the children of the forest as well? I asked, very curious. Suddenly, his face grew grim. I was confused. What had I said which warranted such a response? Soon, I had my question answered, and I wished I had never asked it. The sword is a relic of the past, kept as a reminder of what is to come. The North remembers, and that sword is the greatest reminder of the threat the living face. I grew confused at that. The living. And what made the sword such a reminder? He looked as if was battling with himself to continue or not, and he chose to do so. His next words chilled me to the bone. 8,000 years ago a winter came that was cold and hard and endless beyond all memory of man. A night which lasted a generation. Kings shivered and died in their castles, and women smothered their babes rather than have them starve. It was in this darkness that they came for the first time. Tall and gaunt with eyes as bright as blue stars, they hated every creature with hot blood in its veins. They swept over holdfasts and cities and kingdoms, killing heroes and armies by the score. Riding pale dead horses and giant ice spiders, they led a host of the dead. They had no need for an army, as men provided them with all they needed. Every man of ours that fell was another one added to theirs. Eventually, my ancestor Brandon the Builder managed to drive them back into their lands. Ice was wielded by the Night King, their leader, and was taken as a reminder to never forget what lurks deep north. You wanted to know of what Bloodraven prepared for. Exactly that. Sometime in my reign they will return. The Greenseers have seen it. Now tell me, are you prepared to stand beside me now that you know of this? I was shocked, terrified, and all around numb. I tried to answer yes, grandmother's training on courtesies and manipulation unconsciously creeping in, but before I could even answer he just looked at me with an understanding smile and told me, "Think it over, do not give me an answer right now." He motioned a guard to come closer. "Edric, take the Lady Marjorie to her chambers." "Yes, your grace," the guard answered back, stunned the king even knew his name. John turned to look at me again, smile on his face and said, "Think it over. I enjoyed this conversation. I hope you decide to stay," and then proceeded to walk away. Underscore 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 underscore. I was still in shock when grandmother and Willers entered my chambers, eager to see how the conversation had gone. Once I told them, they were as pale as me. Oh, they would have scoffed at the idea that the mythical others were still alive before they got here, but after seeing magic up close they could not as easily dismiss it. Once I finished summarizing my time with the king, grandmother let out a smile at me, although it was a bit strained, reasonable given what I had just told them. "Marjorie, aside from the disturbing parts of your talk, it seems as if you did a great job at making him like you. I see that being blunt worked out well for you." "I'm happy," she said. "Yes, it seemingly did. I also enjoyed it. I think I could get accustomed to it." "What do you think of what he told me, Willers? Aside from the disturbing story of these others, I think you did an admirable job with him. I think you should go ahead and marry John Stark. He is a good man. I've asked around and the only thing I've been told is precisely that. He also presents our best chance at survival should these others really come to be real, aside from the fact that the wall still stands between us and them, something that was not present in the original Long Night. We also stand to gain a lot of influence for House Tyrell both here and south of the Neck. We know that Joffrey Baratheon will look for any excuse to war with the North once he is crowned, and we also know that only the combined might of the Six Kingdoms could challenge the Kingdom of the North. Our position is already secure with the loyalty of our three most powerful vassals, so we could either stay neutral in such a conflict, or we could back the North. The Riverlands are likely to split as well, given the king's aunt is a Tully by birth, and Dorne would rather burn to Dragonfire than ally themselves with the Lannisters. It would be a war guaranteed for failure, and once it would be dealt with, House Tyrell would be the ones to dictate what happens south, he answered. I should be impressed, but frankly it was normal for Willers. He had shown good promise as a knight before his injury to the Red Viper. Since then, without the ability to hone his martial strength, he turned to hone his mind. He was taught by my grandmother just as I was, and he had fostered with the Hightowers, giving him the added benefit of being extremely well read. My grandmother continued speaking, "It is as Willers said, there is no real issue that would make us turn away from this alliance. And should the others be real, then the wall is there to stop them." I thought the same. "I will try to speak to him before the day passes to make my sentiments known," I answered. Underscore 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 underscore. I was standing outside of his study. I knocked, and he called out asking who it was. I told him I was there and he beckoned me forward to enter. He was seated and holding a quill, paper right in front of him. He looked as if he had been working prior to this. He looked at me and asked, "Have you come to give me your answer, my lady?" "I have. I will marry you," I said confidently. "If I may ask, what are your reasons?" he asked. "From my impression and that of your servants, you are a good man, and so I know you will at least be kind, even if we do not end up loving each other. Additionally, if what you say about the others is true, you are me and my family's best chance at surviving. This will also add to my family's influence greatly," I said honestly. He smiled at that. "Then we will marry. My uncle will finish negotiations with your father regarding your dowry and bride price soon. I am happy you decided to stay," he finished. "Let me walk you back to your room." I nodded at that and took his arm in mine. We walked calmly after that, with us making small talk along the way. Finally, he left me at my door. I entered and felt a smile on my face. This wasn't that bad at all. Underscore 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 underscore. 2 weeks had passed since that day, and today was finally the day of my wedding. I was ready. Already my mother and grandmother had passed by my chambers, mother talking about how incredibly proud she was of me, and of how gorgeous I looked. Meanwhile, grandmother just advised me to keep myself focused, trying to appear as serious as possible, but it was evident to see just how happy she was for me. Father had passed by with Laura's and Willa's as well, and by God had that been a unique meeting. Father burst into tears the moment he saw me, muttering about how beautiful I looked and how proud he was of his daughter, a future queen. Willa's and Laura's just said some encouraging words to me, which I was thankful for. As much as I appreciated my parents fussing, I don't think I could take it from my brothers and grandmother on top of that. Eventually, the time for the wedding finally came. It was night time, as northern weddings usually were. I was dressed in a white dress, with furs stitched onto it. My father escorted me to the ceremony, ready to give me away to my soon-to-be husband. As I walked towards the weirwood, I looked around me to see everyone around me. Lords and ladies around me, with my family close to the front on the left, while my future husband's family were to the right. I saw John standing beside his uncle beside the ancient tree. He was dressed in a black doublet, the direwolf sigil of my future house stitched on his chest. Furs were draped over him as well. To the right side, beside the Stark family, I could see a huge unmistakable figure, a giant, but what surprised me was the short brown creature that was standing there as well. A children of the forest, I thought. We finally reached the weirwood tree, and I heard the Fist of Winter speak. Who comes before the old gods this night? Marjorie of the House Tyrell comes to be wed. A woman grown, true-born and noble. She comes to beg the blessings of the gods. Who claims her, said my father. John of House Stark. King in the north. Who gives her, said John. Mace of House Tyrell, who is her father, replied my father. Lady Marjorie, do you take this man, said Eddard Stark. I take this man, I said, smiling at my husband. He smiled back and stretched his hand towards me. I took it in hand and kneeled with him in front of the heart tree. I never was that pious in my worship for the seven, but perhaps now that I was in the north the old gods would listen. I prayed for children, strong sons and beautiful daughters. I prayed for prosperity, both for my new kingdom and my old one. And finally I prayed for a good marriage. We stood up, hand in hand, and my husband shouted. The ceremony is over, my lords and ladies. Now we feast. And we made for the feast. Underscore 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 underscore. The feast was swinging in full effect. Men were drunk and laughing, music was blasting throughout the whole hall. I was seated at the high table, my husband to my right. His family to his right, mine to my left. My father was grinning ear to ear throughout this whole feast, ecstatic about my marriage. He was drunk as well, which made him look pretty foolish. In comparison, my husband's uncle, Eddard, was pretty sober, only occasionally drinking from his cup. The Royal Admiral walked towards us, smile on his face. Your Grace. I am very happy to see you wed. I wish your father were here, I'm sure he would have loved your new wife, he said, smiling. Thank you, uncle, for your kind words. I hope you are enjoying the festivities, for I certainly am. I am happy to see you here as well, family is always welcome, said my new husband. After that we continued to eat in peace. Occasionally John pointed out an important lord I would need to remember. Lord Skagstock, for example, was a short, stocky man with black hair. He was important as he was lord of the largest cities in the north, Skagtown. They specialized in whale hunting, where they sold the fat they pried off of them to Essos. Lord Marndaley and Lord Northstark were also rich on trade with Essos. White Harbour and Hardham were both incredibly successful trading hubs, with White Harbour even used for docking some of the Navy ships. Lord Goldstark stood out, brown hair with a long face, having a passing resemblance to the Starks. They were jokingly said to be the Lannisters of the North, and although they were certainly one of the wealthiest houses in the North, they were not nearly as rich as the Lannisters or even my house, since 2/3 of their ores mined were paid in taxes to House Stark. This might seem to be a huge portion, but I had learned that most northern lords were content with what they had, and House Goldstark existed only due to the generosity of House Stark, which made them incredibly loyal, save for a few idiot lords they had had throughout the years. These houses had made their wealth off of trade, or mining in the case of the Goldstarks. House Bolton was a given to look out for too, but they seemed pacified with an appointment to the King's Council, not to mention the heir, an honourable kind man, unlike his house's reputation, was set to marry the Lady Sansa Stark. Sansa was said to be in love with Lord Domeric, so I sincerely hoped they have a good marriage. The Thans were others I had to watch out for. Their Magna, or leader, was Sygorn, who had married the Lady Aelys Karstark the past year. Not exactly a house, they were a clan in which a leader was chosen by vote of the people, usually after proving his worth as a warrior and leader. They lived by the Valley of Than, the farthest settlement up north in the kingdom, and were said to be the first defense against the others, having built defenses and stocking dragonglass weapons to use against them. They were the strongest clan north of the wall, capable of producing 10,000 warriors, but they usually stayed out of southern wars, instead focusing always on remaining alert for any signs of the others, something which the other lords respected. I had learned that, aside from House Northstark, the lands beyond the wall were maintained by clans, all of which were led by leaders chosen by their people, not any heritage-based system. Rudey Hall was home to Tormund Gunstbane, a giant of a man with red hair, or kissed by fire as the free folk liked to say. His clan could raise about 5,000 warriors. In the fist of the first men Mance Rayder ruled, having amassed 10,000 warriors of his own, making him almost as strong as the Thans. He was slender with a middling height, long grey hair with brown eyes. He was an incredible singer, as he had performed a few songs in honor of our wedding. The Ice River clans, by the Antlers River, were led by Varami Sixskins, who was said to be the most powerful warg aside from the Brandon Stark, and they could raise about 5,000 men. Finally, the Lord of Bones lived by the Haunted Forests, and he led about 5,000 men. Another house I had to remember were the Umbers, who were pretty wealthy as well, courtesy of their vodka business, of which they were the sole providers in the Northern Kingdom. Great Jon Umber was also the royal general, something which gave him a considerable amount of political power, although I had learned he rarely used it. They also raised a considerable amount of cattle. The Tall Hearts were pretty wealthy, courtesy of their corn production, which they sold to the royal family. The royal family then used it to produce rum, the other original northern drink. Houses Moat Stark of Moat Cailin and House Reed of the Neck were also wealthy off of their agriculture. Their lands were perfect to grow rice in, something which they took great advantage of. They, along with the lands of the Twins, which is fertile land in the Riverlands, produced about a half of the food for the north. Suddenly my musing was cut short by Great Jon Umber shouting, "My lords! The feast is almost finished and our bellies are full with food and ale. Let us bed them." Soon everyone was shouting, "To bed! To bed! To bed!" and I was carried out by several lords, them stripping me but taking careful care to not inappropriately grope the new queen. From the corner of my eye I could see the same thing happen to my husband, although the ladies had no such issues with touching John. Finally we were let into our chambers, both of us flushed from the wine and the bedding. I was not nervous, the wine making me more confident about the upcoming action. He looked at me, silently asking with his eyes, and I told him, "Go ahead husband. I am yours and you are mine." He smiled and the rest of the night was a pleasurable blur for the both of us. Dana is I. We had just finished burning the body, as befitted our tradition as Targaryens. Viserys. I know he wouldn't have made a good king, but he didn't deserve to die like this. Not when the usurper was squandering his rule and oppressing the poor small folk of Westeros. It wasn't right for Viserys to die, forgotten in an alleyway after being knifed down by the usurper's assassins. I was angry at many things in the moment. No, I was furious. Furious that I was so useless I was unable to save my brother, furious at Viserys for dying and leaving me alone, furious at the usurper for killing my father and stealing my family's throne in his greedy quest for power. Hells, I was even furious at the Pentoshi Magister who was hosting me, Iloio Mapatis, for not stopping the assassins. He had been the one who informed me of what had happened to my brother. He was very kind, yes, but there was something which didn't seem right to me, I just didn't know what. He had told me his powerful friend in Westeros, of which he talked long and often. I sometimes wondered if they were lovers, had verified that the men who had killed my brother had indeed been sent by Robert Baratheon. Right now, I was feeling lost. The only family I had left in the world, and he was dead. I had no one. The Magister had mentioned to me in passing that many rich merchants and lords were seeking my hand, offering great wealth in exchange for it, but that he had not consented to any without first speaking to me. It was kind of him. He had told me something curious though. He said that he knew of a man who would be a perfect match for me. He called it a match fit for a queen. I frequently wondered who he was talking about, but I never managed to pry the information off of him. He had taken to the habit of speaking to me of matters in Westeros, perhaps thinking I would like to know more of my homeland. To be truthful, I rather liked it, and sometimes I dreamt that me and Viserys were in Westeros, him being king and I a princess. Recently Magister Iloio had informed me of some news of Westeros as well, something which was apparently very important. The new king in the north, and how we Targaryens hated that title, son of the man who helped the usurper depose my family, had just married a lady by the name of Margaery Tyrell, who was the daughter of the Lord Paramount of the Reach. Apparently a match such as this had not been made in a long time, which begged the question. Why? I, like many others, assumed it was for grain. It was known that the Reach was the biggest provider of grain in the Six Kingdoms, and while the North kept itself fed for the most part between trade with Braavos and Pentos and their own crop farms, winters were very harsh, this one being predicted to be the longest one in years. Extra food was always welcome. I didn't know why, but the thought of the coming winter filled me with dread. Underscore 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 underscore. Princess Daenerys, the master wishes to speak with you, said the servant. Please follow this one to the hall, she continued, and started walking. When I got there I was greeted with the Magister sitting down with a smirk on his face. Beside him were two men. One had grey long hair, red eyebrows and a red beard in his face. He looked old, at least 50 years of age. The man beside him made me pause. Tall and powerful, with broad shoulders, muscular arms and a flat stomach, he was quite handsome. He had deep purple eyes as well, with silver gold hair cut short. Overall, he was a very handsome man. He carried a sword to his side, which I faintly recognized from a book I had read, but I couldn't put a name to it. Magister Mapatis waited until the servant was gone before he started speaking, smiling while doing so. Princess Daenerys, do you remember I spoke of a potential match for you, he asked. Instantly, I felt nervous. He smiled at me, and said something I had a hard time believing. This is your potential husband. He is the King Aegon VI, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Elia Martell. He was spirited out of the Red Keep just before the Lannisters sacked King's Landing, and he has been raised in secret by your father's former hand, Lord Jon Connington. My heart felt like it had stopped beating. A nephew. He was my nephew. Why am I only just finding I still have family left, Magister? I screamed at him. And how do I even know he is my nephew to begin with? You only need look at this aunt, he said, and then he unsheathed his sword. Dark purple ripple patterns lined the blade. This is Blackfyr, the blade of our ancestor the Conqueror himself. As to why you just found out, I myself did not know of my heritage until recently. It was determined that keeping the secret until the right time was upon us was of paramount importance, and that time is soon, he said, a proud smirk on his face. I looked back at him, incredulity in my face. I was speechless. Genuinely speechless. If this were true, he had an even greater claim than Viserys had. I had already connected the dots and rightfully assumed that I was to marry him, but I was still confused and skeptical. Why was now the right time? How were we going to take Westeros? and the sword did not guarantee his legitimacy, only that he possessed a Valyrian steel sword. I vocalized these doubts and he quickly put them to rest. I'm sure the Magister has told you of our powerful friend in Westeros. He is Varys, the Spider. Varys was the one who saved my life all those years back, and he has been feeding us information ever since. He says that the Queen, Cersei Lannister, will soon have the usurper killed. Once he dies, his two brothers will both claim kingship, plunging the country into chaos. If that isn't bad enough, Balon Greyjoy has been building up the Iron Fleet again, which no doubt means he means to declare himself king, again. Not to mention the known disdain Joffrey Waters has for the North, which will no doubt force them into a war soon. As to who I am, the only proof I can give you is that of Lord Varys and the man who raised me, Jon Connington. But why would the usurper's brother seek kingship when he has two heirs? And what do you mean by Joffrey Waters? I asked confused. Joffrey Waters is not Robert Baratheon's son, he is the Kingslayer's. Varys said the same is true for all of Cersei Lannister's children, he answered. I was stunned. The audacity to cuckold the king and have 3 bastard children. I had no problems it was with her brother, hell's my own parents were brother and sister, but Cersei Lannister destroyed Tywin Lannister's ambition with her stupid mistakes. I couldn't help it. I started laughing, so hard I actually started to tear up. I'm sorry, but this is too much. The irony is great. After everything the great Tywin Lannister did to secure his legacy, it'll all come crashing down. This is great. I said laughing. I don't know if you are who you say you are, but frankly you're my best shot at gaining back Targaryen power. Yes, I'll marry you. We shall bring fire and blood on our enemies. I said while smiling, feeling invigorated. He just smiled back at me and responded with, I couldn't have said it better myself. Underscore 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 underscore. 1 month had passed since I had first met Aegon. We had married 2 weeks later, a small and private ceremony. Our wedding was conducted by a septon as tradition dictated, but only with Jon Connington and the Magister Mapatis as witnesses. We wanted to remain in hiding until Westeros was weakened by the chaos. The bedding wasn't as bad as I had thought it would be, which was certainly a nice surprise. Aegon had made his best efforts to make it pleasurable for me as well. Although the first time was only bearable, we quickly fell in rhythm with each other. It was pretty enjoyable now, and Aegon was very kind. Currently we were both sitting on our bed, gazing at the 3 petrified dragon eggs placed in the fire. They had been a gift from the Magister, a relic of our former glory. I held them each night before going to bed, taking them straight out of the fire. I had learned that I did not burn, which was something which seemed incredible to me. I had always been comfortable with high temperatures, but never to this degree. Aegon had theorized that it was the magic in our blood which caused this. I had felt heat coming from the eggs, but when Aegon touched them he said it felt cold to the touch. I didn't know what to think of that, but we chalked it up to me having more magical ability than him. I felt a connection to them, almost like what mothers described when they spoke of their children, and I believe that they will eventually hatch. Then, our enemies will learn to fear the dragon once again. John 3. I've been married for 3 months now, and I found I was liking it. Marjorie was nice enough and we got along pretty well. She was great at politicking, something which I needed to get better at. I had little patience for pageantry or false words, but she was a natural at it. No doubt one of the benefits of learning at the knee of the Queen of Thorns. Using her charisma and beauty she could control a room like few others, and it certainly helped that she was a great conversationalist. She was kind as well, something which made the marriage more bearable, not to mention we had developed a good relationship in bed. Nights were certainly enjoyable now that I was married, and although there were no signs yet, we had hoped that she would soon start to bear children. Her family had left soon after the wedding, all except her grandmother, Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns, and her brother Loras. I had been able to form opinions about the Tyrells, and to say the least they all ended up being positive. Mace was a fool, but he was a good man. He was a proud man, but he deeply cared for his children. I remembered his face the day of my marriage, once me and Marjorie were pronounced husband and wife. I had never seen a man as happy as him that day. It was touching. Loras was a good man as well. Honorable as well, he always tried to present the image of a perfect knight. He was enamored by tales of great warriors in war, and was highly impressed with some of my Stark ancestors after reading of their deeds in our library. He was a bugger as well, although I didn't have a problem with that. He had been ordered by his father to stay with Marjorie here in the north, most likely to make sure she was safe and happy. His mother, Aeleri, was a kind woman, although I hadn't shared enough time with her to make a complete opinion of her. Willers was good company. He was one of the smartest persons I had ever known, something which more than made up for his disability. When he was 4 and 10 he had ridden in his name-a-day tournaments, where he suffered a crippling injury at the hands of the Red Viper, Prince Oberyn Martell. It was purely an accident, and since then he and the prince had become fast friends. He was very politically savvy. It seemed only him and Marjorie had gotten that from their grandmother, and example of this being his choice of marriage, the Tarly girl. With his upcoming marriage to Tala Tarly he had the loyalty of the 3 most powerful houses in the Reach, those being the Redwynes, Hightowers and Tarly. Olenna Tyrell, well, she was certainly something. Truly a pleasure to be around. Her tongue was sharp as a sword. Disparaging comment after comment, she was a breath of fresh air. No matter who you were, peasant or king, she had no care for propriety. I remember the first time I spoke to her, a few hours after beating Loras in the training yard. "I heard you knocked my grandson into the ground like the silly little boy he is," she greeted me, smiling. "Lady Olenna, a pleasure to see you," I replied. "Oh, I'm sure, your grace. Truly it must be a pleasure. Tell me, how do you do?" "Well enough, I suppose. I have had a relatively pleasant couple of days, and you Tyrells truly do make good company. My uncle has taken on some of my duties to help lessen my workload, and so that has certainly helped," I said. "I am so flattered at your kind words on my house, your grace," she replied in an obviously sarcastic tone. "If I may ask a question, your grace, how exactly do your magics work? My granddaughter has been wondering the same thing, but you hadn't been all that forthcoming when asked." I replied, "Some magic is inherent, such as that of warging and that of green seeing. Others, such as the ones performed by more dark practitioners and the children involve other requirements. Such practices are usually forbidden unless allowed by royal decree, and with the 3-eyed raven working in our favor they cannot be done in secret." I could see she was a bit disturbed. To be honest, I was as well when I had first heard of it, but at least those sacrifices, and they had to be sacrifices since blood was the universal currency for magic, were always picked out from the worst criminals that could be found. I tried to reassure her, "Do not worry, your granddaughter will never be subjected to these dark practices while I rule as king. I personally have never practiced them, nor am I fond of them," I said. "I see. At least I can say that my dear Marjorie will be safe here, and I figure I will as well," she said. I was confused at that last thing she said, so I asked her to clarify that. She responded in turn, "Well, you didn't think I would leave my only granddaughter alone now, did you? Of course I will stay here. Besides, I have such a fascination with your culture now, well, I just have to satisfy it." She suddenly looked to the side, my cousin Rob walking right up to us. "I will leave you to talk with your cousin, your grace." "By your leave." I nodded at her and she left. Most of our conversations tended to go like that. A few sarcastic remarks, some questions about the North or what I thought about Marjorie and her trying to unbalance me by saying something I didn't know. I truly did enjoy those conversations. Underscore 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 underscore. I had just been informed of an emergency council meeting. Apparently we had gotten word of important events which had just happened. I got to the council chambers, the rest of them waiting for me. I sat down and they were all grim-faced. I figured it must be serious then. They all stood up and greeted me, "Your Grace." "Sit, my lords. Someone, tell me what exactly is going on," I replied. They all looked back at each other, until Bran decided to end the silence. Viserys Targaryen, son of the Mad King, has died. I heard of it while walking through Pentos. It is said that he was killed by Baratheon assassins about 1 week ago. There has been no word of his sister, Daenerys Targaryen. I was confused. I do not mourn the man, but neither do I hate him. They would have been a problem for the South, not us. Why is it that there was a council meeting called so urgently after we were informed on this? It was the Royal Justice, Roose Bolton, who answered me. It is important, Your Grace, due to what has happened to the king on the Iron Throne, he said, and then looked at Bran, annoyed. Lord Brandon, please proceed with the rest of the information. Bran smirked, clearly amused by Lord Bolton's annoyed state, but then sobered up quickly. Your Grace, yesterday morning, exactly 1 week after Viserys Targaryen's demise, Robert Baratheon died in his sleep. Officially his heart gave out due to his debauched lifestyle of drinking and indulging in whores daily. I grew stone-faced at this. This was no coincidence, something was amok. And unofficially, I asked him. He was poisoned. It is our thinking that these two events are connected, and this means that someone is actively trying to create chaos. The only problem is that we have no idea as to who that is, he answered. I grew frustrated, seeing the writing on the wall. Our intelligence says that the soon-to-be crowned king on the Iron Throne, Joffrey Baratheon, is essentially a religious fanatic. He's reported to have a strong hatred of our kingdom, either due to his religious belief or to jealousy of our power. This does not bode well for the peace we have with the South. My lords, what are your recommendations going forward? Great Jon Umber was the first to respond. Your Grace, I recommend we start preparing for war. I believe it prudent we march 4,000 men of the Royal Army to join the 1,000 we already have garrisoned at the Twins. A force of that size should be enough to hold any army at bay while we fortify the Neck and Moat Cailin should anything happen. I also recommend we notify lords to begin preparing their men. 60,000 men added to the Royal Army in a march south would be enough to defeat the Southerners. I nodded at that and addressed the council. Any against this motion? No one spoke out. Very well, Lord Umber, have those men sent out to the Twins. Maester Aemon, send word to the lords north of the wall to begin preparing their men. Tell the clans and lords North Stark and Skag Stark that they are to stay north looking out for the ancient enemy. They will take no part in our fight down south. I told him. The Free Folk clans and the North Starks and Skag Starks had almost never been included in wars. Their duties were to shield us against the enemy, the others. Only 3 times had they ever been called to war. First, during the Andal invasion of Argus Sevenstar, where Theon the Hungry Wolf would acquire his name. Later, during the Second Andal invasion, about 200 years from then, where the combined kingdoms of the West, Reach and Vale sought to invade the North, and finally, during the War of 73 AC. Lord Benjen, what will be done to fortify our coasts? I asked my uncle. I will order 20 ships cross the Northern Canal and join the 50 stationed on the western coast to patrol the sea for any Ironborn raiding parties. The other 30 will stay in the eastern coast, supplemented by Lord Marndaelis ships as well, if he is amenable. The Skag Stark and North Stark ships will stay deep north in continuing trade and guarding the back end of our eastern coast, he responded. Very well, carry out your orders. Lord Marndaeli, are you amenable to the Royal Admiral's proposal? I asked him. Yes, Your Grace, I am willing to protect our coasts. I will provide 20 ships to aid the 30 stationed in East, he replied. Lord Marndaeli, how damaged would you say our treasury would come to be should war manage to break out? I asked the Royal Treasurer. Well, Your Grace, should war break out we must rely only on food we ourselves produce. The Reach will not be able to feed us according to the negotiated dowry due to geographical locations, so we would have to make do with what we produce, that being mostly rice in the Neck and Riverlands and potatoes in the colder parts of our kingdom. We would need to buy more food from Braavos and Pentos should that happen, or our people will starve. Should we deploy 60,000 men to join the Royal Army, it could cost us up to 1 million dragons, reducing our treasury's amount by 1/4, responded Lord Marndaeli. I nodded at him and said, begin preparations then, although I wish we could avoid it, it is likely that war will break out soon. Lord Commander Mormont, will the Watch be able to keep the peace should any war break out? Will you need any assistance from the Crown? Gia Mormont responded, "No, your grace. The watch has no want for food, drinks or equipment. The taxes collected from Lords Winterstark and Snowstock, not to mention the percentage of taxes paid to the crown that we receive, has been more than enough. We are fully prepared to man the north should the time come." I smiled, happy with his answer. Suddenly, the captain of the Winterguard, Cregan Snow, entered the chamber, looking frazzled. He had a raven in hand, and as soon as he saw me he dropped to his knees in a bow. "Your Grace, an acolyte received this raven while this meeting was taking place. It is addressed directly to the king in the north, from the Iron Throne." I nodded at him and extended my hand. He gave me the scroll and I opened it, and read it. I grew furious and punched the round table, denting it. My uncle Eddard looked worried. "Your Grace," he said. I just handed him the scroll, and once he read it he grew furious as well. Captain Cregan Snow was still present in the room, and he went to leave, but I raised my hand and said, "Stay," and he did. He was loyal to my father, often spoken about as a good source of advice by him. I would want to hear his thoughts on this later, and I knew he would keep this secret. I nodded at my uncle and he started to talk. "King Joffrey Baratheon has demanded that Margaery Tyrell presents herself to King's Landing to marry him in the light of the Seven. He proceeds to claim that a marriage in front of the old gods is not binding, and that should they refuse dire consequences will follow," he snarled. Everyone was shocked at the utter arrogance that the letter showed. I looked at Bran and told him, "Bran, walk into Birds down south and try and get a grip on what's happening. We will discuss our response while you gather more information." He nodded at me and his eyes rolled to the back of his head, signifying that he was watching. We discussed a couple of potential responses while he did that. Great Jon Umber argued for a declaration of war immediately, citing that such an insult could not go unpunished. Roose Bolton argued we pay for the services of assassins, either the Faceless Men or the Sorrowful Men, who were much cheaper than their Braavosian counterparts. My uncles advised caution and that an insult be fired back. We deliberated on these for a while until Bran stopped watching, a shocked expression on his face. "The South is in chaos. Stannis Baratheon and Renly Baratheon have both fled to the Stormlands and declared themselves kings, citing that Joffrey Baratheon is the bastard son of Cersei Lannister and her brother, the Kingslayer. The Stormlands have split, the Lannister army is assembling themselves to march towards King's Landing. Dorne will either stay neutral or fight against the Iron Throne. The Reach has decided to stay neutral except a few houses, such as the Florents. The Riverlands have split between the Tullys who wish to stay neutral and the houses closest to the Crown Lands who have declared for Joffrey. The Ironborn are stirring as well, and they a significant amount of ships at their disposal," he said. All of us were shocked. He continued. "The Lannisters' host will number about 60,000 men, added to the 20,000 men of the Crown Landlords who have declared for Joffrey. Stannis has the Lords of the Narrow Sea behind him, numbering about 10,000 men, 100 ships, with about 10,000 Stormlanders behind him as well, while Renly is said to be gathering 30,000 men under his banner." It was chaos, bloody chaos. I thought on what to do and reached a conclusion. "Lord Umber, Maester Aemon, your orders remain the same. Send out the Ravens and march those men south to hold the Twins. Uncle Benjen, coordinate the defense of our coasts as you planned. For now we wait. The North need not involve themselves in the matters of the South." They nodded at that. "I believe this to be time to conclude this meeting. Inform me should anything else of importance happen. You are dismissed." They all bowed and mumbled "Your Grace" as they left the room. I stayed behind, sitting in my chair. Captain Cregan standing to the side in the wall, red rain hanging off of his belt, a conflicted look on his face. As my uncles were leaving they both gave me approving looks, happy with my decision to wait and not declare war needlessly. They each gave me a pat on the back and left. Once we were alone I asked the captain the following. "Captain Snow, you have served my father since Robert's Rebellion. Tell me, what do you think about what was just discussed? Please, be honest." He looked surprised I wished to seek his counsel, but he was known to be both a great warrior and wise. He was 50 years old, yet had few equals in the battlefield. "Your Grace, I think that you have made the right decision. Your father used to speak of you, told everyone you were a better version of him, as good with the sword but with a calmer mind. Seeing you perform just now, I find myself agreeing with his sentiments. You seem to care for your people, and when reminiscing on the war, King Brandon would often mention how he told you of his experiences, he said, a kind look on his face. I nodded, a pensive look on his face. If there's one thing he crammed into me, it was the horrors of war. It is no song or tale, it is blood and gore and shit and suffering for everyone involved and many innocents. I have no wish to put my people through that, but it seems I will have no choice. I smiled sadly at him. Come Captain, escort me to my chambers. Underscore 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 underscore. Marjorie was waiting for me, dressed in an almost see-through nightgown. I smirked as soon as I saw her. Tonight promised to be good. It was already dark, and if not for the few candles scattered throughout the room I would not be able to see her. It was quiet as well, no ambient noises of animals or servants to disturb us. Wife, I said. Husband, she replied. I walked over to her and kissed her. It soon became intense, but I noticed and quickly put a stop to it. I wanted to tell her what had transpired and hear her thoughts on the matter. She looked at me confused, and I pulled her into my lap. She smirked at me, and went for another kiss, but I reluctantly stopped her so I could explain what had happened. Marjorie, I have news to tell you. Many things have happened south and I wish to hear your thoughts on them. I told her. She looked at me, surprise visible on her face. I didn't blame her. While we had most certainly developed a good relationship through the months of our marriage, we still didn't love each other, and it was still rare that I relied on her counsel. I proceeded to explain all that had happened and she responded. I see, and you then decided to wait till more information on the coming war would be made public. I agree with your decision. An insult back and neutrality is currently the best course of action. I loathe to say it, since my family will soon face a choice on who to declare for, but I am queen in the north, and must look out for our people first. You made a good decision, she told me, smiling. I am glad that you think so. It eases my heart a bit. I replied. I didn't know what more to say, and I think she noticed that as well, as she started kissing on my neck while she spoke. You know, I wish you would take me to Long Lake one of these days. I've heard it's incredibly beautiful out there, and I do want to see the northern equivalent of Summer Hole, she said, smirking at my sure-to-be glazed expression. She then kissed me again. We separated and I said. I think I will do it soon. You have my word, Marjorie. I replied and stared at her. The conversation was effectively over. We looked at each other silently, neither of us saying a word. Suddenly she leaned in and started kissing me. I kissed back and we proceeded to have a great night together. Tyrion 2. Well fuck. That was my reaction once I heard of what had happened with Stannis and Renly Baratheon. Renly was dead, and now Stannis was marching towards King's Landing, 20,000 strong. 30,000 Lannister men were on the march to our aid, led by my uncle Tijet, but right now we could only count on the 6,000 men, that number being made up primarily gold cloaks, with about 500 knights and men at arms, since suddenly without warning most of the lords of the Crown lands withdrew their support. We would probably have to at least hold the city for a while until the reinforcements arrived, a fact which completely terrified me. Stannis Baratheon was one of the best military commanders in Westeros, matched only by few men. Some men in that company included my father, Randyll Tully, Eddard Stark and Great Jon Umber. My father was currently riding hard towards King's Landing, trying to make it in time to relieve the incoming siege before the city fell. That meant that we had to plan the defense of the city ourselves. I was cursing my sister's stupidity when she convinced Joffrey to dismiss Sir Barristan from the Kingsguard. Although not on the level of these men, he would have surely made a huge difference here in the defense of the city. We were left short a commander of equal skill to Stannis, meaning we had to make do with what we had. I had been named as Hand of the King in my father's absence, and so I was busy coordinating the defense of the city with Bronn, reading through city plans to figure out how we were to defend King's Landing. Suddenly, Joffrey entered my chambers, a serious expression on his face. Your Grace. I said, standing up. I heard Bronn say the same after me. He nodded at us and looked at Bronn. Sellsword, leave us, he said. Bronn nodded and left the room. Uncle, I don't like you and you don't like me, but we will have to work together here if we mean to keep King's Landing in our possession. Well. What a way to put, I thought. The heathen Stannis Baratheon is days away from attacking my city. What have you drawn up so far, he continued. I looked at him wide-eyed, surprised that he actually would be taking my counsel seriously. Well, I predict they will focus most of their forces on attacking Mudgate. It is the weakest of the gates, and it is the easiest to land near to. Instead of meeting them at sea with the piss-poor navy we have, we should load up those ships with wildfire and have them ignite once Stannis' ships have been lured into the river from Blackwater Bay. There, we will trap them there by raising a great steel chain I have commissioned for the coming siege. That, I figure, would at least take out a portion of his ships. Afterwards we will focus on two gates, the Mudgate and the King's Gate. We will post 4,000 men on the Mudgate and 2,000 on the King's Gate. You will have to lead the defense on the Mudgate. I fear it will be the only way our troops will be motivated enough to hold. He looked at me, face scrunched up in thought. Where will you get the wildfire necessary for such a thing, he asked me. Your mother decided to have pots of the thing made in preparation for this, although with no plan on how to use it. I answered him. He looked angry at that, probably not happy Cersei had undermined him. I saw him take 2 deep breaths, and then he was calm. Tell me, do you truly believe that you cannot spare more men to the King's Gate? Only 2,000 men will not be enough to hold it, he asked me. If we spare any more men, I fear we will not be able to hold the Mudgate. It is the easiest gate in the city to attack, and it is where I am sure your uncle will focus on. Very well then. I approve of your plan, uncle. I will lead the defense of the city walls. With his piece said, he turned around and walked towards the door, intent on leaving. Just before he could leave the door he stopped, and turned around. Uncle, I respect your intelligence, 7 no it's the only part of you I do, so do not fail me. I will do my part, you do yours, and with that he left. Underscore 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 underscore. 1 week had passed since our talk, and we had received word that Stannis and his fleet would be here in a few more hours. All of the preparations had been set. Our sodders had been drilled appropriately and the ships had been loaded with wildfire, but our morale was low. I hoped Joffrey had thought of something to say, because we couldn't hope to win with our soldiers feeling so defeated. I had been assisted by my squire, Podrick Payne, great kid, in preparation of the coming battle, and so I was already dressed in my comically small armor. A servant had come to fetch me and ask me stand at the city walls, ordered by Joffrey. Stannis' ships could already be seen. I got up and started walking towards there, and as I got closer I saw the men gathered. Joffrey was standing on the wall, sword and armor on him. Standing tall with his sword at his side, dressed in golden armor, he looked like a young Jaime reborn. The fact that Jaime was standing right next to him only enhanced would have been touching had the reason behind his looks not surfaced. I got closer to them and Jaime walked out to me. Tyrion, what in the hells are you doing? Get back inside the keep, he told me, a serious expression on his face, worry in his voice. I planned the city defense, it is only right I witness it and help command men. I could see he was worried, rightly so. I will be careful, but I need to be out here. I saw him nod, but it was clear he was extremely worried about me. I had Bronn and Pod to protect me, plus as hand I had a certain number of guards assigned to me. The ships could be seen from afar already. As they drew closer we told them to hold their fire. The wait was intense. Tension could be felt across the walls, everyone anxious or scared for the coming battle. The ships kept getting closer until they rammed into one of our galleys. Suddenly, a tiny light was seen going across the sky, intent on landing on our ships. The arrow landed and the explosion was deafening. I saw the results and it almost made me sick. I could make out the wreckage of about 130 ships, almost half of Stannis' fleet. I could make out the smell of burning wood and flesh from here. Our men were in awe at what they had just seen. Taking advantage of this, Joffrey looked around, and once he made sure the men were hearing him, he started to give a riveting speech. Men! Today is the day you make the Seven proud. The heathen Stannis Baratheon is sailing here to take this city. With him comes a foreign god. A god who burns children and the elderly at the stake. A religion who worships fire, the very thing the Mad King was feared for. The false King Stannis Baratheon brings his heathen god on the shores of this great city. He means to make us worship his false god by the sword. His men come to burn our septs and idols and rape our women and children. Will you let them? No, the men roared. Will you let them? He screamed. No. I was shocked. I looked around, and sure enough our men were motivated. Still, Joffrey wasn't finished. Then we will make them bleed. Pray to the Father for justice this night. Pray to the warrior for strength to kill these heathens. Pray to the smith to keep your weapons strong. Pray to the crone for his wisdom while we fight. But let them pray to the mother. For we will have no mercy for them. Ah! It was crazy. Every man was screaming out of their minds. I could make out the fear in their eyes, but no longer was it just about dying. It was about their families. King's Landing still remembered the Lannister sack in Robert's rebellion, and they would do anything to suffer that a second time. I looked back at Joffrey, and I almost went bug-eyed. He was smiling. Calmly smiling like he had not a care in the world. As if he hadn't just convinced all these men to die for him. I walked towards him, and he looked at me, a confident smirk on his face. Lord Hand, my blade yearns for heathen blood. Once Stannis is seen on the battlefield I will personally enter the battle and slay him, one-on-one. I looked dumbly at him. Frankly, by this point I didn't know how I was still coping with what was happening all around me. I was about to go to battle. Me. The imp. I would be dead by the time I got 5 steps past the gate. As I snapped out of my fear-induced mental rant, I saw Stannis' fleet docking by the King's Gate and I knew that the real battle would start now. I had the Hound take 150 men to harass Stannis' men in the shore, and for a moment they successfully pushed them back. I could see them battling it out, chaos, blood and fire all around them. Then, for some odd fucking reason, the Hound retreated back into the safety of the walls. I ran forward, intent on questioning just what in the seven hells did he think he was doing. Clegane. What in the world are you doing? Why would you retreat when you were winning? I questioned him, screaming. Fucking fire you cunt, that's why. I'm not fighting inside a fucking fire imp. Then tell that to the King Hound. Fuck the king, he screamed. I looked at him shocked. He looked at me, a furious snarl on his face. Fuck the king, fuck the Lannisters and fuck this shithole city you call King's Landing, and with that he stormed off, threatening death to any who tried to stop him. I focused back on the battle and I could see the enemy getting out of their ships, unloading out their siege weapons. Fuck, they were fearsome. I could see a huge battering ram and ladders to scale the walls. They started to run towards us and it was a sight that would haunt my nightmares for the days to come. Waves of men crashed into the walls of the city, all screaming bloody murder at us. Our men were docking and firing arrows, waves and waves of them crashing into the enemy. Those who weren't firing bows were throwing rocks down the walls or pouring hot water or hot sand down at the men trying to scale the wall using the ladders, or manning the battering ram. I could hear men screaming all around me. A man suddenly managed to scale the wall, about 15 meters in front of me, and he unbuckled his sword and quickly slashed away. He killed about 3 men before he was taken down. Suddenly the walls were being overrun by the enemy. I could hear myself screaming orders at the soldiers. I decided I needed to be closer to the action to direct the men properly, and so I took my axe and started rushing towards the fighting. Men, kill all of these red godfuckers. Drive them back. If they get the wall they get the city. Drive them back. I screamed, utterly terrified. A man rushed past me and buried his sword deep in one of my guards' bellies. Blood splattered onto my face, and I could smell the shit coming out of my man. I saw the enemy turning towards me and I knew I was dead should I let him see me. I grabbed my axe and screamed. And slashed at his knee, cutting right through it. He fell forward and rolled over, looking into the sky. I could see the fear in his eyes when he saw me, and suddenly I heard him pleading. "My lord, please, please, please don't ki." I silenced him with a swing to his neck, cleaving through it cleanly. My eyes were wide with shock. "I just killed someone." "I just kill, my lord," screamed my squire, Pardrick. "We have to move." Still in shock, I just nodded at him and started marching back closer to the walls. I could see the fighting was still going on, but we had managed to push most of Stannis' men back out of the wall. Right now it was firmly in our control. I chanced to look down, and it looked like most of the men at the King's Gate had retreated or died. There was still some fighting going on, courtesy of the ladders to our walls, but their battering ram had been destroyed by the numerous assaults on it by the numerous rocks it had been hit by. I figured that most of the remaining enemy men were going to focus on the Mudgate, and so that's where I went next. I arrived there to see skirmishes happening on the wall, and the gate was broken and open, although we were repelling them before they could get too close. Joffrey was standing away from it all, surrounded by his Kingsguard, a heavy smile on his face. I saw them all covered in blood, and I asked, "Your Grace, you were fighting. Were you injured?" Joffrey just started laughing hysterically. "Ha ha 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 ha, these heathens didn't know what was coming for them. Stannis, where are you, you coward?" I looked at Jaime, who looked equally as worried, but before we could speak someone shouted, "It's the heathen king's sigil," and sure enough there it was. A crowned black stag of Baratheon enclosed in the fiery red heart of the Red God. A contingent of about 50 soldiers was crowded tightly around it. "Stannis! Face me, heathen, face me!" screamed Joffrey, a manic look on his face. Suddenly I could make out a red light. A glowing red sword to be exact. It was Stannis, and he was cutting through our men like butter, intent on going towards Joffrey. Slash, duck, parry, sidestep, thrust, block, parry, swing. He did every single sword move and then some, killing at least 20 men before he got close enough to see Joffrey. Joffrey went forwards as well, his way being cleared up by the Kingsguard, and soon they were right in front of each other. Fighting was still going on around them, but a circle had formed around them to give them space to fight. Jaime was preoccupied fighting his way through the sea of bodies, since Joffrey had been too eager in his pursuit of the Manus and had been separated from him. He was an intimidating sight. Tall and broad, with a black beard and a fringe of black hair on his head. He was taller than Joffrey by a head and a half, and he had his glowing sword in his right hand. They looked at each other, they started fighting. Although lean, Joffrey was by no means skinny, and he was very skilled. I saw Stannis swing down at his Joffrey, and Joffrey sidestepped and parried it away from him, going for an upwards thrust soon after, forcing Stannis to block and step back. Joffrey then started attacking, a thrust to the stomach which was quickly parried, followed by a spinning swing to Stannis' side. Stannis backstepped but couldn't get his sword up fast enough and got a cut on his side as a result. He snarled, and suddenly he was attacking. A swing of his sword, coming from his right side, forced Joffrey to block. The strength of the blow staggered him back and was soon followed by a front kick to the chest which sent him falling backwards to the ground. He thrusted downwards at Joffrey, aiming at his heart, but suddenly Joffrey managed to get his sword up and parried away the fatal blow, instead getting clipped in his side, blood pooling out of this stomach. That parry was enough to unbalance Stannis, and so Joffrey stood up, breathing heavily. Stannis was stoic, no emotion visible on his face. Joffrey was livid. A huge snarl on his face. "You think you can defeat me, you heathen? I am Joffrey Baratheon, son of Robert Baratheon, demon of the Trident, chosen by the Seven. I will kill you, Stannis," screamed Joffrey. He ran towards Stannis screaming bloody murder and faked a swing to his right, instead bringing it to his left, cutting at Stannis' side, where he had already caught him at the beginning of the fight. Stannis let out a yell and grabbed his side with his non-sword arm, but quickly brought it back to his sword to block a downward swing from Joffrey which would have cleaved him in half. He was furious now as well, and the Baratheon fury showed. With a sudden burst of strength he shouldn't have had with a gash on the side of his stomach, Stannis swung the fastest swing I've ever seen at Joffrey, Baratheon strength visible in his attack. Joffrey had no choice but to block or be bisected in half. He tried, but the blow was so hard it almost tore the sword from his hands. Stannis was in close again, and instead of swinging the sword he swung an elbow at Joffrey which broke his nose, cartilage and blood flying through the air. Dazed, Joffrey stepped back, but Stannis punched him in the mouth before he could make enough space. Teeth flew out of his mouth, and now Joffrey was a mess. A sword swing to the face followed, and Joffrey only managed to maneuver his face enough to receive a gash instead of losing his eyes. He was screaming now, tears falling out of his eyes. He's afraid, I thought, fear and worry in my heart. Somehow he was still standing, although that was quickly remedied by Stannis, who attacked with a mighty thrust of his sword. Joffrey raised his sword and turned sideways, intent on sidestepping the attack, but instead got caught on the side of his sword armor split in two with a huge cut on his skin, almost to the bone. I could also see his left arm, and I realized it was missing 2 fingers, which were probably hacked off during the attack as well. He dropped his sword, no strength left to hold it, and then promptly got kicked in the chest for a 3rd time, this time no defense available to him on the ground. I heard Stannis scream his first words in the whole fight, "Die bastard," and he aimed down, murder intent in his figure. Suddenly a sword was poking out of his stomach and he paused, vomiting blood. He looked to his back, and Jaime was there, sword buried in his back, a furious look on his face. He pulled it out and went to dig it in again but was met with a block by Stannis' sword. Kingslayer. Man with no honor. Try and kill me now. With a gash at his side and a hole in his stomach, he would surely die by the end of the night. Instead of retreating or accepting his death, Stannis flew into a rage. He was whirlwind of death and destruction, and Jaime couldn't keep up. A failed parry resulted in a gash in the arm. A failed backstep resulted in cuts between his armor. At some point they both lost their swords. Stannis kicked Jaime in his leg, the blow so hard the metal in Jaime's leg dented. Jaime went on one knee, but suddenly Stannis grabbed the back of his neck and kneed him in the face. Spit and blood flew through the air, and Stannis kneed him again. Then, he elbowed him with his right arm and Jaime fell like a sack of potatoes. Stannis turned back and went and got his sword back, while Jaime crawled and managed to get back on his feet, sword in hand. Taking unsteady steps forward, he slashed at Stannis, which Stannis promptly parried and then backhanded him in his face. Staggering back, Jaime was barely able to get out of the way of a huge slash. It was followed by another one, intent on chopping his head off. He raised his sword to block and braced, but suddenly Stannis changed his wrists and the blade fell upon his wrist. My heart stopped. I saw Jaime's right hand flying through the air, still holding his sword. I looked back at him. He was in shock, looking at a stump which until moments ago was a hand which made him one of the most dangerous swordsmen in Westeros. I heard a furious scream behind us and looked back. Joffrey was rushing towards Stannis, knife in hand. Injuries catching up to him, Stannis was slowed down enough to be injured by the sneak attack by the blonde-haired king. A knife was stuck in a chink on his armor on the lower part of his stomach. Then a kick by Cerys Oakurt, who had finally paved a way through the sea of bodies, managed to make Stannis drop his sword. He looked at Joffrey, red-faced with veins popping out of his forehead, eyes wide and red, a crazed look on him. Then, he grabbed him by the neck with his right hand and raised him up, choking him, while he used his left hand to punch Cerys in the face, unsheath a dagger and stick it in his chest, kicking him away soon after. He went back to choking Joffrey, who had a look of fear on his face, gasping for air while slowly turning blue. He kicked and punched to no avail, Stannis would not let go. Suddenly I heard a war horn sounding, and I almost fell in relief. Lannister banners in the distance, I could make out about a rough estimate of 10,000 at the front, with many following at the back. They attacked the back of Stannis' men, slaughtering each one they could get a hold of. Stannis snarled and tried to throw Joffrey downwards to finish him off, but before he could do that he was hit and sent flying by a horse. A giant of a man unmounted and unsheathed his sword, and I finally recognized him. Sir Gregor Clegane, the Mountain. Stannis staggered back to his feet and picked up a random sword lying around, his own sword long lost in the confusion. He attacked with a swing to his left, which was blocked, and another blow to the right followed, which was also blocked. He thrusted forward, intent on skewering Sir Gregor in his stomach, but it was to no avail. He was too tired and injured to properly mount a proper attack. It was parried and then Sir Gregor slashed him from his right shoulder to his left hip. He fell backwards, gasping for breath, blood rushing out of his wounds and mouth. Sir Gregor looked down at his opponent, defiance clear in his face even at the verge of death, and promptly swung his sword shoulder to shoulder, cleaving Stannis' head clean off. I could faintly hear screaming in the background. King Stannis has fallen. Retreat. Retreat. Sir Gregor took one look at Joffrey and Jaime, and cursed. He grabbed Joffrey, threw him over his shoulder and mounted his horse, riding towards the Red Keep, while a contingent of Lannister sodders at his side quickly got a hold of Jaime and rode back as well. I quickly grabbed Podrick and my own personal guards and rushed back to the Red Keep as well, intent on escaping this hellhole people call a battlefield. The rest of the night was a blur from there, with Father quickly taking control of the forces inside the city and repelling the last remnants of Stannis' men. He said no words to me once he saw me, simply nodding with a frown on his face and moving on. By the time the fighting had finished completely it was already the early morning. I was dead tired, and soon fell asleep, intent on enjoying being alive to drink another day. Underscore 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 underscore. It had been 2 weeks since the Battle of the Blackwater, as the common folk had called it. I had been removed of my position as Hand of the King now that my father was here, but I was rewarded, somewhat, with an appointment to the Master of Coin office. Baelish had been sent to the Vale, since he had promised he could bring us their support through his connection to Lysa Tully. He had managed to convince my father to grant him Harrenhal, citing that he would not be able to properly propose marriage to Lysa Tully if he did not own a large enough piece of land. Varys had completely disappeared since that night as well, no one seeing him in the Red Keep since the start of the battle. I was currently on my way to the dining room, where we would be having a family dinner, since Joffrey and Jaime were finally well enough that they could go by day-to-day tasks. I entered the room, but I couldn't bring myself to make a mocking remark today, it was too somber. Jaime looked like a completely different man. A sad look on his face, unkempt hair and beard also present. He even smelled, probably hadn't bathed once. He was struggling to cut a slice of meat, with Cersei looking annoyed at his inability to do so. Tommen looked sweet and ignorant of what was happening around him, as always, while Myrcella looked concerned about her uncle and brother. Cersei looked annoyed at everything, an eternal scowl on his face. Father was stone-faced, not one emotion discernible. Joffrey looked terrible. A huge gash that went from his right forehead to his lip, and it was a miracle he kept his nose and eyes, although his face was heavily scarred now. Bandages could be seen beneath his robes too, wrapped around his midsection, where he had gotten cut by Stannis, and his left hand was completely wrapped in bandages too, since his hand had not yet healed from having 2 fingers chopped off. I sat down and we started conversing. First was official reports of casualties. We had lost 4,000 of the 6,000 gold cloaks who had fought for us, with most of the knights and men-at-arms also dying in battle. In comparison, Stannis had lost about 14,000 men in total, more than half of those casualties being from wildfire. Then, we talked about what would be our next moves. Tywin started talking to Myrcella about her upcoming betrothal and Cersei almost exploded with rage. Myrcella, you will marry the Lord Robert Arryn and give us the Vale. Lord Baelish will arrange it after he marries Lysa Tully. This will bring us the Vale, which will help us bring the Crown Lords to heel after their betrayals. The Storm Lords will follow along soon enough now that they have no figure to rally behind. Tommen, you will marry Lady Shireen Baratheon and give us the Stormlands for good. Joffrey, we will propose a match between Oryane Martell and you to pacify Dorne. Cersei screamed at that. You are not marrying my children like pieces on Sivas. I won't have it. You'd have Joffrey wed a Martell whore, sell Myrcella to a boy who is simple and still breastfeeds at 8 years old and give Tommen a hideous scarred girl, who to boot is the daughter of a traitor. They will do as I say and so will you should need be, he screamed back. She drew back, surprise and fear in her face. Myrcella looked resigned, Tommen looked confused and Joffrey looked angry as well, but didn't dare say anything back to his grandfather. Finally, he asked him something. What will we do about the Reach and Riverlands? Both of their Lord Paramounts have strong ties to the north, and they stayed neutral throughout this whole war. Will we move against them? Not right now. We don't have a strong enough motive to intersect on our behalf. They have not explicitly moved against us yet, so we will simply wait. Grandfather, when will I have to marry my cousin? Asked Tommen. As soon as she flowers, Tommen. That will be about in 2 more years, answered Tywine. Very well, grandfa, hack. We all looked on, confused at his cough. Hack. Hack. He kept coughing. Suddenly his face started turning blue and blood started pouring out of his nose. He kept coughing, but now blood was coming out of his mouth as well. Hack. 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 Finally, we all snapped out of our horrified stupor and rushed to help him. Tommen! Wailed Cersei, tears streaming down her eyes. He just kept choking on his own blood, and he started shaking. Suddenly, he stopped. Tommen! 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 Screamed Cersei. Myrcella was crying and Joffrey was furious. Father looked apoplectic. Jaime just looked heartbroken. Suddenly, Joffrey said something underneath his breath, which turned into a screaming rant. The Starks, it was the Starks. Those fucking tree huggers. Those fucking heathens. They did this. This means war. You will not declare war on the North due to your ridiculous jealousy of them, screamed Tywine. I can and I will. I am king. Not you. What will Lord say when you let the Crown Prince's assassination be swept under the rug? Tywine fumed at that, but realized he couldn't do anything. Dorne was a likely prospect, but Doran and Oberyn Martell were notorious for not going after associates of their enemies, instead going directly at their enemies. We don't hurt little girls in Dorne. A stupid saying to be sure, but one they stuck to. They would have come after father, not Tommen. The Tyrells and Martells wouldn't dare organize something like this, and even if they had no motive. The only possible enemy was the North, and for all of their supposed honor, the history of Stark kings was riddled with ruthless kings, so I certainly wouldn't put it past them. The Targaryens weren't in any position of power, Hell's Viserys was dead, so they certainly weren't it. Starks were the only plausible suspects. I was furious and crushed, since I really cared for Tommen, but I didn't think it was the Starks. I just couldn't figure this out. There was one thing I knew. This means war. Jon 4. Anxiousness was spreading through the air. War had been declared on the North by the Iron Throne, and although I didn't want to go to war, I would certainly be the winner here. We had more men, not to mention houses Tully and Tyrell decided to side with us here, courtesy of our familial connections. I had no idea who had framed us, since I knew we were not responsible for Prince Tommen's death, but I would make sure that he would be brought to justice. As soon as he is found I will personally Blood Eagle him, and then and only then, would I rip out his entrails, fought he Hearttree. I had Bran and the rest of the Green Seers searching for who the culprit was, but it was only for vengeance. War was inevitable now. It didn't matter that we truthfully denied these allegations, their troops were already mobilizing, and with that cunt king's fanatic beliefs this had only sped up an inevitable war. I was with my cousin in my tent, just speaking with him helped ease my mind. He was my brother, more than even my half-brothers. Robb Stark was my brother, my man. He would always be loyal, that I knew, and if he served me well, as I hoped he did in this campaign, I would look to reward him greatly. Alaric Snow, my half-brother, was a loyal man as well, but we never shared enough before he set out to Essos to join the Company of the Rose. It was something which I regretted, and hopefully one day we would be reunited once more. I bet you really miss doing your duty to your wife, cousin, said Robb while smiling. I looked at him annoyed, and snapped back. And I bet you miss spending coin to make Ros act as if you're a good lover, Robb. Ha. She must be missing me right about now. Last time I visited her she told me I was the best she had ever had, and that says a lot. But I think you are confused. She must have meant that you were the best pair she had ever had, not the best in bed. You must be hard of hearing if you heard that. I said, smiling. If you say so, Jon, if you say so. Wait, forgive me, I seem to have forgotten my place. I am sorry, Your Grace, he said while dragging out the words, a shite-eating smirk on his face. I groaned. You do know I could order you to call me by my name instead of that ridiculous title, don't you? I responded. But will you? I don't think so, King Stark, he said, still smirking at me. I looked at him, blank-faced, and then we started laughing. You know, I still feel weird when I'm addressed like that, I said. I can imagine. Father always said that kingship is no easy burden. What do you think of what will happen now that war is upon us? Many things, Rob, many things. I know many will die for a war I have no wish to participate in. I must though, for our people. King Joffrey means to change our way of life, our gods, for his 7 Andals killed giants and the children, they chopped the werewoods and their maesters and septons hate anything associated with magic. They mean to change everything that makes us first men, and that will not be allowed to happen. You speak the truth. But we will turn them back like we always have. They never even managed to place roots in the north, even the Mandaelis worship the old gods now, and even with my mother worshipping their gods they are still only seen south of the neck. We will win, Jon. Those southerners will know what our house words really mean, he said confidently. I smiled at him, thankful for the support. A bit later a soldier came in and told us that the members of my council were ready at the chambers. I started walking towards the council chambers, where I would meet with the council in order to plan our moves for the coming war. My cousin Rob was trailing beside me, ready to learn how these things operated. Once my uncle retired he would be my Fist of Winter, so he would start attending council meetings and would trail me once the war started. Beside him was Margaery. She was visibly worried, evident by her continued petting of Ghost in an effort to calm herself. I knew her well enough by now that she was frustrated by her lack of knowledge in war. She could dance around lords and ladies in the courtroom with unmatched grace, yet she knew nothing of how a battlefield worked. She was also worried about the fact that I would have to march out with the army, especially so soon after she had gone to Maester Aemon and gotten her pregnancy confirmed. It was still in the early stages, but we were both overjoyed with the development. She would stay here, running the north with Bran and Aemon's help, while I would be marching with the army. She was furious at that, citing that as king I did not need to fight, since I had many men who would happily do it for me. I just told her the same thing my father had once told me. Northerners will never fight for a king who does not march with his soldiers. A king's role is to protect his kingdom, not have others do it for him. The day a Stark cowers behind his castle is the day the Starks stop being kings. I still remembered her shocked expression at that. She had never heard anything like it. Afterwards she had calmed down and that was the end of it. We arrived at the council chambers and I opened the door. The members were already there, grim expressions present on their faces. I pulled up Margaery's seat for her and then sat down myself. Rob was left standing at a corner of the room since he was not officially part of the council. Great Jon, what is the status of the royal army? What about our vassals, how many men can we count on? Your Grace, we have 5,000 men at the Twins, while the other 15,000 will march as soon as you order them. Since you dictated that no men from beyond the wall would fight in the southern war, we can count on 80,000 men from our lords south of the wall. The 40,000 men beyond the wall will stay behind as per your decree, he answered. Very well. We march south tomorrow with the 15,000 winter soldiers we have available. Inform the lords to bring 60,000 men to meet us mid-March while another 20,000 are left here should a second host be needed. Uncle Benjen, are the men of the navy ready? Aye, your grace. We are ready to deploy at any time, he answered. Then have 20 ships pass through the northern canal to join the 50 ships posted on our western coast. We must be wary of the Ironborn, as they will use any sign of weakness as an opportunity to raid. Lord Mandaely, would you be willing to offer support to our eastern navy with a few of your ships? Uncle Benjen nodded at me and then looked at Lord Mandaely for an answer. The northern canal stretched from White Harbour to Moat Cailin and then to Salt Spear, which finally connected with Blazewater Bay. It connected our western and eastern coasts and allowed our navy to move undisturbed by southern forces. Lord Mandaely answered me, I would be glad to offer aid to the navy with my ships, your grace. I am glad to hear it, my lord. Lord Commander Mormont, ensure that the watch keeps functioning as it always has. I won't have them marching south. I told him. It will be done, your grace. Bran, what is the status of the south? How many men will we be facing, and how many can we expect from our allies? I asked Bran. The Lannisters' losses in the Battle of the Blackwater were minimal, about 3,000, since most of the Crown's casualties were the Gold Cloaks. We can expect about 60,000 Westernlanders, along with about 15,000 Riverlanders who will also be fighting for the Crown. Houses Vance, Mouton, Bracken, Woad and Howick have declared for King Joffrey, splitting the Riverlands in half. The Tullys can theoretically provide us with about 15,000 men if the rest of their vassals follow them. Meanwhile, the Reach Lords have mostly stayed behind the Tyrells. We can expect 60,000 men from the Tyrells, while about 20,000 Reachmen will fight for the Crown. The Vale has officially declared for Joffrey as well, as my aunt was visited by a Lord Baelish a week ago, who is definitely responsible for my aunt's actions. Those are 40,000 men who will potentially fight us as well. There has been discontent in the Vale, so there may eventually be a grab for power by one of their strongest vassals, but right now there hasn't been anything solid. The Crown lands are still silent, and so no word of support from them has been heard for Joffrey, while the Stormlands can at most provide 20,000 men after their losses at the Blackwater. They will most likely stay out of this war, as they have no figure to rally behind, now that both Stannis and Renly are dead, he said. I see. Then we will operate based on the fact that the Vale will also fight against us in this war. Bran, you will stay in Winterfell to help Queen Margaery rule while we march south. Send any pertinent information via one of your ravens should anything important be found. My lords, if we have finished, then this meeting is dismissed. With that the councillors stood up and exited, leaving me alone with my wife. Let us walk to our chambers, we can talk more freely there. She nodded and took my hand, and then we started walking to our chambers. We finally arrived, and once we did she let go of my arm and looked at me. My family and the Tullys are rebelling against the Crown. What do you plan to do? Will you annex these territories? What happens after we win? I was touched at her confidence in our chances of victory, but it didn't change the fact that I did not know what would happen after all of this was over. Margaery, to be honest, I have not even thought about the consequences of this. I could annex the Riverland territories, but having the Reach under me would be spreading myself too thin. It is too far south for me to rule, and I am a Stark king, a Northerner. Winterfell will always be our seat of power. Speak to your grandmother about this, and then to your father and brother. We need to have a plan of action for when this war is won. She nodded at me, worry in her face. You will be careful. I know I cannot convince you to let others lead and fight for you, but that is no reason to enter the thick of fighting for no reason other than your pride. She asked me, worry in her tone. I smiled at her calmly. Do not worry. I will come back from this. I need to meet our future children, do I not? I told her reassuringly. She looked at me funny, and then said. They say Starks are the most honorable men in Westeros. Do you promise to come back? My wife, I promise to come back from this. I told her, while looking right at her. I leaned in and kissed her, and the rest of the night was filled with the sounds of our love-making. Underscore 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 underscore. It had taken us 2 months to march to the Twins. By the time we had crossed the Neck, the Lannister army had already marched through the Riverlands, and Tywin Lannister was currently sieging Riverrun. Our Walk Scout reports had estimated about 30,000 Westernlanders, with about 15,000 additional Riverlanders, most from houses who were either located closer to King's Landing or form those with grudges against House Tully or some other house which had sided with us. His brother Kevan was sent to invade the Reach with the other 30,000 Westerlanders and 20,000 Reach men who had pledged themselves for King Joffrey. We would be facing approximately 45,000 men once we battled. We were about 80,000 strong, so we had the definite advantage in numbers, but I still found myself annoyed at Edmure Tully's utter incompetence. He did not even manage to muster his banners before his lands were invaded, and he was put under siege about a month ago, at least according to my Walk Scouts. Now it would fall to me and my men to free him. He would need to hold for at least 1 week, as that was the quickest I could push my army before we got there. I would need to absorb their territories as recompense, my lords would demand nothing less. Now I was walking towards the command tent, where I would be meeting with the Great Jon and my uncle Ned to plan our attack plan against the Lannisters. I reached the command tent and directed a soldier to fetch them for me, with orders to include Robb as well. They arrived and greeted me. "Your Grace," they said while bowing. "Stand, my lords. I am in need of your expertise. Help me plan our strategy against the Southerners." "As you wish, your Grace," said my uncle. "I predict they will meet us on the field quickly, as if they do not they expose themselves to the rest of the Riverlords, finally organizing themselves and gathering even more men against them. Tywine is well versed in the art of war, he will not allow himself to be outnumbered even more than he already is. If he is expecting us, then we will need to rely on shock value if we are to win the first battle quickly. I do not want to waste more lives than necessary. Should we deploy the giants first, to cause chaos, and then deploy infantry and cavalry to finish them off? What of the battlefield? Where will we fight? Or is it possible that Riverrun might fall before we arrive and are thus forced to conduct a siege?" I asked them. "Your Grace, I find it probable that we are forced to conduct a siege against Riverrun. Edmure Tully has so far proven to be utterly incompetent as a military leader, and as such I think it prudent we do not push our troops to reach Riverrun quickly. Lord Tywine is well known for being a great military commander, evidenced by the 5th Blackfyr Rebellion, the sieges of both Tarbeck Hall and Castamere, and his attack on King's Landing. I estimate it will only be a few days before the Tullys flop," responded Great Jon. My uncle Ned followed him up by saying, "As much as it pains me to agree with Lord Umber here, I fear he is correct. My brother by law is a fool, a child of summer. He has no hope of defeating Tywine before we manage to get there. Aside from that, they are not our vassals. We may be connected due to my marriage, but that by no means our king must ride for their aid. We should set pace for a week and a half. That is the quickest I estimate we can arrive if we do not want to fatigue our army. Are you in agreement, Lord Umber?" I am. Regarding a pitched battle, well, your Grace, I will discuss our strategy with the Fist of Winter should it be found necessary, but for now I recommend siege preparations be conducted. We should have the carpenters handle the building of the bridges we will need to be able to get to the walls, as Lord Tywine will raise the drawbridges so we cannot storm the castle. We will need to start gathering wood from now on as well, as it is possible Lord Tywine will have the trees close to Riverrun burnt so we cannot make use of them. Anything more regarding our strategy is pointless, as it could change in a moment's notice, thus we will have to wait until we arrive there, your Grace, said Great Jon. Very well. This meeting is dismissed, I said, and they both bowed and left the tent. As soon as they did, I sat down and started rubbing on Ghost's fur, something of a coping mechanism I had apparently developed to deal with the stresses of kingship. Soon many Northmen will die, thousands in fact, and they will all perish because I ordered them to. I did not even want to go to war, yet it was forced upon us. Do you think I am being a good king, Ghost, when I am going to send thousands to their deaths? I asked my companion. He just looked at me silently, gazing up to me with his red orbs, and then he whined a bit and moved closer to me, rubbing his head on me. I smiled, a bit comforted at his gesture, and thought back on Maester Aemon's words. Kill the boy Jon Stark, and let the man be born. The North needed a man, not a boy, and that is what I will be. Dana is too. We had just arrived at Volantis. The Golden Company had been contracted by the Triax for a 1-year period in response to increased Dothraki activity in the region. It was taking much effort on my part to acclimatize myself with the climate of the region. It was hot and humid, making me very sweaty and leaving my body with less strength than what it was used to. I had been amazed at the city though. Its walls were high and powerful, a testament to the free city's strength. I had never been here before, but found it terribly ironic that the Old Bloods considered themselves so superior to non-Valyrians, yet they had never been Dragon Lords. It was terribly arrogant of them, but most nobles were inherently arrogant, so that was no surprise. Their black walls, which were in the eastern portion of Volantis, housed only members of the Old Blood and were something truly incredible. Built 200 feet high, its walls were so thick that 6 4-horse war chariots could race around its top, something which was actually done annually to commemorate the founding of Volantis. We had been invited to Triac Malak Omega inside the Black Walls to discuss the contract for the coming year, and I used that opportunity to scope out the old city. Great resplendent palaces with amazing courtyards were the norm, with each showing off the ostentatious amount of wealth the old blood had available. Temples of many gods could be seen here as well. Many of those who lived inside the walls actually still kept to the gods of Valyria, something which frankly amazed me. I had no knowledge of the gods of my forebears, and aside from the section of old bloods who worshipped them, the religion was dead to the world. Aside from the temples to the Valyrian gods, there was also a great temple dedicated to Orla. John Connington had told us that the Temple of the Lord of Light was actually significantly bigger than the Great September of Baelor in King's Landing, which was said to be the grandest place of worship in Westeros. We were led into Triarch Magai's manse by the tiger cloaks and arrived to see a fairly stout-looking man waiting for us. He was about 6 feet and had handsome features, although they had obviously been tempered with age. He had light blonde hair, almost white in fact, which clearly showed his Valyrian heritage. He greeted us with a snarl on his face, disgust clear in his features. "Homeless Harry, commander of the Golden Company, welcome to Old Volantis. I honor you with my invitation." After that he looked around, getting a measure of us, until he looked at me and Egon, and then his expression changed from disgusted to intrigued. "You too, who are you? You have the Valyrian look." Egon looked unsurprised at this, but then again he must have been planning it for some time. He had stopped dyeing his hair blue after we had left Pentos, most likely so he could perhaps gain support from the Tiger faction in Volantis. Egon looked at me, a confident expression on his face, and then turned back towards the Triarch. "Triarch Magai, I am Egon Targaryen VI, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and rightful lord of the Six Kingdoms. This is my wife, the Princess Daenerys Stormborn Targaryen. We come here to fulfill the contract you have hired the Golden Company for, and to negotiate aid in our planned reconquest of our birthrights," he finished, a confident expression on his face. Triarch Malakwo Magai looked impassive at the response and responded. "You certainly look Valyrian, but what aside from your word do I have as proof of your heritage?" "I have my family's ancestral sword, Blackfyr. I was raised by Lord John Connington, former hand to King Aerys and close friend of my father Rhaegar Targaryen. I have the Golden Company, full of Westerosi exiles, behind me in my quest to regain my family's throne. I have many powerful friends and allies in my homeland of Westeros, and I have married my aunt Daenerys, a woman of pure Valyrian stock. Join me and we could ensure Valyrian supremacy in the world once more," he answered cockily. I had to admit, it was certainly a good an answer as any. It did make sense, and once we were restored to our positions we would be in prime position to help the Tigers of Volantis in their wishes of Volantine power throughout Essos. "You certainly make a sound argument, Lord Egon, but right now you are nothing more than a commander for the Golden Company. A powerful position to be sure, but nowhere near a king as you make yourself out to be. Even your troops were originally a Blackfyr army." "How do I know you are not one as well?" he asked impassively. I had to admit, I had asked myself that very question, and I had no clear answer. I had reasoned that John Connington would not have raised any Blackfyr when he was as loyal to my family as he was. My husband responded with that very reasoning. "I see your reasoning, and I have been properly convinced, at least for now. Even if you were a Blackfyr you would still be Valyrian, and thus that would be all that matters. I will discuss future plans later, but know that I have decided it's in my interests to support you, King Egon. You and your queen are invited to enter and leave the Black Walls as you please." "I thank you, Great Triarch. You honor us with your generosity," he responded while smiling. With that we left the manse and exited Old Volantis. I was left with a feeling of frustration due to how seemingly unconcerned Egon had been with my opinion. I had not even known what would be discussed, and that greatly bothered me, but I decided against enraging myself further and unleashing my frustrations on him. He had just been inconsiderate. Underscore 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 underscore. It had been 3 moons since we had arrived at Volantis. We had recently received word of the events in Westeros. Stannis Baratheon had been defeated and killed in battle in the Battle of the Blackwater. A bloody battle, the Stormlands had lost many men, something which would prove very useful to us once we started our invasion. We had agreed we would begin our campaign with an invasion of the Stormlands. Dorn would support us due to his blood ties with their ruling family, and with the Stormlands weakened and now without a clear heir, it would be easiest to shore up support there. Varys had sent word that the North would be mucked up in the Riverlands fighting the Lannisters, leaving the South open for the taking. We had no plans to try and subjugate the North, having the multiple examples in history which had proved it to be a fool's errand, but we were certainly content with having them do our jobs for us. As ruthless as it sounds, my brother Viserys' death had been a blessing. Without the last male Targaryen living, our house's threat level towards the royal Baratheons was neglectful at best. With the death of Tommen Baratheon, the Iron Throne's forces were soon to be stretched too thin. They would have to be prepared to fight at three fronts, with the Reach mostly siding against them after almost 2 decades of misrule and sanctions from Robert and then Joffrey for their loyalty during the Usurpers' Rebellion, their fight north and having to guard themselves against any possible Dornish retaliation from the actions of the sack of King's Landing. The death of Tommen Baratheon had actually not been our agent Varys' doing. We were as stumped as the Stark King supposedly was as well, and our spymaster was working hard to see who had been the one to arrange the assassination. The Tyrells were tied to the north, but that would hopefully prove to be a non-factor once we landed in Westeros, and Dorne would more than likely side with us too, if only for revenge. The plan was to wait until the war in Westeros was about done and then invade through the Stormlands, gathering support and men while on the march to King's Landing. Varys had sent word that he had been in communication with Prince Doran Martell, who had been receptive of our strategy and would hold off on joining the war until we arrived. Varys had quietly gathered us the support of the Crownlanders as well, which brought us about 15,000 men, which added to the 20,000 Dorne could provide, and the 20,000 Stormlanders who could still fight would give us a strong host once we arrived, not to mention the men of the Golden Company. That had been an unpleasant surprise when I had first found out about it. I remember when the Golden Company had laughed us out of their headquarters when they were operating out of MYR, but now they were supporting a Targaryen restoration. It had angered me greatly once I had been informed of their involvement, but at the end of the day I couldn't do anything about it. Objectively speaking, they were the best army available besides the Northern Royal Army. They had never broken a contract and were 10,000 strong. 500 knights and 500 squires, with 1,000 archers and 8,000 infantrymen made up this army, and most importantly, they were all professional soldiers, something which would make a difference when placed against a mostly levied Westerosi host. I finished my thoughts on the war and just started gazing at the fire. The 3 eggs were still there, and I swore I could feel them more each and every day. It was as if they were alive. I tried to make Aegon feel it, but he just couldn't. We had often discussed why that could be, and we had arrived at the conclusion that since I was more purely Valyrian, since my father and mother had been brother and sister, the magic in my blood was stronger. I had been having dreams as well, visions of things I could not understand. One had definitely stood out, hells, I could still remember it. It started out with me gazing at a red comet inside a storm. A kraken suddenly shot out of the ground, dirt around my feet instantaneously turning into water. I saw a grey wolf swimming towards it, with the kraken swimming quickly to it and trying to drown it. The vision changed, and now it was a dragon with black scales. It looked deformed, and I saw it struggling to fly, barely managing to get a few feet off the ground before it had to land again. A huge horse was charging towards it. The scene changed again. I saw 2 stags fighting against each other, with the bigger one eventually coming on top. The bigger stag was then attacked by a lion with stag horns, the result of this being hidden from me by a bright green light. Then I saw a huge wolf staring aggressively at a lion and proceed to attack it. The scene changed again and I was in the air, a terrible coldness wrapped around my body. I gazed down at the ground and saw a huge grey cloud, with a bright blue light at the front. I felt my body shoot down towards the light. I felt a sense of foreboding as I got closer, and as I touched down in front of the blue light, it started materializing into a humanoid figure. Before it ended becoming something tangible, the vision stopped and I woke up, panting. I still remember my confusion and terror at that dream. I had told Aegon of it and he had thought nothing of it, but after the news coming from Westeros they suddenly painted a very different picture. The vision of the Black Dragon brought me lots of questions, some of which I did not want to ask. Aegon had been a good husband. He was kind, a good warrior and overall my best chance at getting back to Westeros. I wanted to believe what he said, but I still had my doubts. Underscore 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 underscore. And so, what did you do next? I asked Egon. He laughed, a happy smile on his face. After finding John in a drunken stupor, we knew he would be very irritable, and so we decided that we had no choice but to take advantage of this opportunity, he said, laughing. We took some pink dye we had bought in Tioche and spread it through his hair and beard. He woke up the next day and it took another day and a half for him to notice what we had done to them, he finished. Ha ha ha. And what did he do once he found out? I asked, still laughing. You should have seen his face. He was as mad as I've ever seen him. He had to go outside and leave me and Septimus with the soldiers due to how big his anger was. I laughed again. It was a relatively funny story about a time Egon had dyed John Connington's hair to a pink color, humiliating him in front of the other Golden Company officers. We had been reminiscing of childhood stories. Naturally he had many more happy ones than me, a product of his childhood being raised by Lord Connington and Septimus. While in the midst of us talking of our past experiences, Lord John suddenly burst into the room, a frantic look on his face. Your Grace, a Dothraki horde has been seen riding towards Pentos. It has been confirmed that it is being led by Khal Drogo, the current most powerful Dothraki Khal. Scouts say that the horde is 40,000 strong. 7 hells. Daenerys, I fear I must leave your presence. I am needed with the officers. Do not leave the manse, and with that he took off, ready for war. Underscore 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 underscore. I finally found him hours later, well into the night. He had come into our chambers, a somber look on his face. Egon, tell me what is happening. I said, frustrated at my lack of knowledge and his lack of concern to involve me in important matters. Khal Drogo is riding towards Volantis with a horde 40,000 strong. He has apparently been Delcaed the stallion who will mount the world, and thus seeks to be the first Khal to sack Volantis. We have been organizing the defense to the city, as they are a week away from arriving. Volantis will provide 10,000 of their slave soldiers to fight against the Khals, while the other 20,000 they can provide will be placed inside the black walls of Old Volantis. We will have to face them in the field lest we starve ourselves by waiting until they relieve their eventual siege, he answered, frustration and concern evident in his tone. I see. This does not bode well for us, does it? We will lose men if we decide to fight, but we cannot break the contract, as the company has never nor will ever do that, aside from the fact that we will lose any support Volantis could provide us should we do that. Tell me, Egon, will I be able to join in on the war councils? I wish to learn of the art of war and how it is waged. I asked him. He looked at me annoyed and then answered me. Are you serious, Dany? Of course not, you're a woman for 7 sake. You will not join in on any war councils, that is my decree as your husband and king. War is no place for women. I was incensed. War is no place for women. Have you never heard of Visenya Targaryen, who wielded Dark Sister, of Rhaenys Targaryen who rode her dragon in war, Hel's even of Nymeria, who conquered Dorne? Have you forgotten history? He just looked at me calmly and said, you are not them now, are you? You are Daenerys Targaryen and you have never even touched a sword. It is much too late for you to learn. We will have no use of you there. Enough of this nonsense, wife, I tire of this and I need rest if we are to prevail against these savages. With that, he stripped and laid down on the bed, falling asleep almost instantly. I was left with my unresolved anger and just laid down beside him, trying and failing to fall asleep. Once I did, I was plagued with another vision. Underscore 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 underscore. I was standing in front of a huge burning pyre, incredible heat coming off of it. I felt this pull coming towards me, urging me to go forward into the fire. I started walking towards it, when suddenly I was able to make out 3 stones sitting in the center of the pyre, surrounding what looked to be a burning horse carcass. I kept walking towards it until I was right in front of it. It felt warm, like a gentle embrace. I stepped in it and stood over the burning horse. I felt a sense of euphoria while standing there, flames carefully caressing my skin, and once I looked upwards I could see the sky had turned red, a huge red comet going throughout the sky. I heard a crack and I woke up, feeling out of breath and sweating. I looked to my side, Egon was still asleep. I walked towards the water pitcher, drank a bit and then sat on the bed once more. I spent the rest of the night waiting, staring out of our window, intent on understanding what my vision meant. Underscore 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 underscore